No one's here yet anyway. We are live.
Hello.
Yeah, so it's like just using sometimes it's just like, because my old computer,
Mhm.
sometimes it was actually it was 13 years old. So I'd be working and all of a sudden like the mouse would lock up for like 3 or 4 seconds. I'd be like, I'd have to just stop and wait for it to come back. So when it's doing it with the new one, I'm like,
When
man,
you
but
at
like
the time were using a wireless mouse or wired mouse?
no. I was using a tablet.
Okay, gotcha.
Then I just had the one tablet. I didn't have the touchpad and the Stream Deck hooked up to it too. It was
Not
just
a fan of
a
touchpad.
tablet, a mouse, and a keyboard. Now
Gotcha.
we
I
got two
remember,
extra things hooked up to it.
gosh, several years ago, I had a computer that broke down and needed a new power supply. And while I was waiting on it to get repaired, I went to the library over at Virginia Tech to use the public computers there,
Mm-hmm.
and they had Macs with the rather colorful monitors and mice.
Oh
They
yeah,
had almost like these pastel see-through colors built into
right.
them.
Those were the iMacs that would keep
Yeah,
the
that
color
was
up.
the most annoying mouse I've ever used.
Yeah, a lot of people. Oh, was that the hockey? That was the hockey puck mouse. No one liked that.
No, it was more like a traditional mouse.
Oh no, the one no one liked was the hockey puck mouse. It was like one of
No, it
these.
wasn't round.
It was round, and that was a problem for people because when you grab it, you don't know up from down.
Yeah, no, this wasn't round, and plus it was also
Okay,
hardwired to
I,
the
I
tower.
think the original iMac mouse was the hockey puck mouse.
Gotcha. Anyways, it was annoying. I didn't like their keyboards either because their keyboards are really, really flat,
Okay,
and the
yeah,
buttons have version
those
no
are those
back.
slim ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
keyboards don't matter to me because I'm not a touch typist.
it just felt so odd compared to what I was used to. It was really threw me off. So,
Yeah,
first world problems.
yeah. What you're used to matters. I actually wanted to start off this show too by mentioning Jack Abel, only because in the Graphic Man show from 2 weeks ago, I think I caught some of it on the rewind.
Yeah.
And one of the guys on that show just happened to mention Jack Abel. You know who he is? He was
I know the name, but he's one of those names that I don't know as much about as I do a lot of other people.
he inked the very first Hulk 181, the first Wolverine. He was the inker over Herb Trimpe on that.
Gotcha.
And he was an inker, in the 60s for Marvel too. I think he started in the 50s even, but maybe not for Marvel. But anyway, his name came up on their channel, and I just never, because I knew Jack. He worked at Marvel.
Gotcha.
And someone had said that that Jack Abel had done something, and he looked up Jack Abel on the internet, and the Deadly Duo. Good evening.
Hello,
and he couldn't find out much information on Jack, and I found that odd. I was like, because Jack Abel is actually among comic book people of the comic book, professionals of a certain age. He's extremely well known.
Gotcha.
Because he was in Continuity Studios in the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he rented a table there. So all those 70s, Walt Simonson, Frank Miller, all those guys who were in Continuitos in the 70s knew Jack. And he was really a well-liked guy too.
Fair.
So
I guess anytime you saw Krusty Bunker's credit, he may have had a hand in it too.
Yeah, he may have had a hand in that Krusty Bunker.
Oh gosh.
Snoopy, Garfield, and Hobbs. Paolo will be along late, as he has been the last couple of weeks. But anyway, like I said, he was well known. He was kind of like, he was the old pro to those 70s guys who were just coming up.
Gotcha.
Just Betty and Veronica tonight. No, we should have Paolo soon.
No swimsuit issues with Betty and Veronica tonight either. So you don't trust me. You don't want to see that.
So like a Jack was he was even one of these guys in the early 60s who had a pseudonym, Christopher. I can't remember. It was his son's name, Christopher something. You'd recognize the name if you heard it, because he was an inker, an early Marvel inker. back when they had to use pseudonyms so they wouldn't lose work elsewhere. Like I said,
Yeah.
all those guys, like, so Jack was really well known, but then in like, I think it was the mid 80s, he had a stroke. There's Paolo.
Here I am.
Hey, there he is.
Here's Hobbs, Snoopy, or Garfield, one of those.
And he doesn't even have a striped shirt on.
I'm just going into a little bit of Jack Abel and who he is, because I a couple on the Graphic Man channel show. I caught part of it from a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And up there's Archie to our Betty and Veronica.
Well, given my appetite, I'm more of a Jughead.
That's what I was going to say. I thought Paolo was Jughead. Yeah.
And one guy, I forget who it was on the Graphic Man channel, was showing off a book by Jack Abel, and he said he tried to look up Jack Abel and didn't find much information on him, and I found that odd, only because Jack Abel, like I said, he's pretty well known within the industry as a person. But it never struck me as, most people probably don't even know who he is anymore. And I don't know how much information there is.
I was getting ready to ask you, did you happen to try to look him up and see what you could find?
No, I didn't even try to look him up, because it's like
I'll just go ahead and try it and see what I come up with.
In sort of the Marvel comic circles, Jack Abel is famous because everybody liked him. Because like I said, first he had a desk at Continuity Studios in the 70s. So all those Continuity Studios guys knew him, and like he was the old pro, the crusty old pro to them.
Right.
He was I don't know how, he was probably in his 40s or 50s in the 70s, and they were all 22, 23, in their early 20s coming up through Neil Adams stuff. So he was, and he was a really nice guy with a really good sense of humor too, and sort of a very dry sense of humor at times. But then after Continuity Studios, he had a stroke in the 80s. And Jim Shooter gave him a job as Marvel's proofreader. So all through the 80s until he died in the mid-90s, he was Marvel's proofreader. One of them, Flo Steinberg came on in the early 90s too.
Gotcha.
But everybody knew him from Continuity Studios. Everybody knew him as like anybody. Everybody who stopped by the office would go over and talk to Jack for a little while. Every freelancer.
Gotcha.
So he was like really well known in the 80s and 90s amongst the whole sort of freelancer. But it's funny, it's been 30 years since then, so that's probably why.
The pen name that he was using, was that Gary Michaels?
Oh, that was it, Gary Michaels. Yes,
Okay.
That was the pen name he used early on, which I think was his son's name.
Gotcha. There are a few, things I'm finding out. It's nothing like really super in depth.
Yeah,
a lot of it's just scans of his artwork.
But that's how I got to meet Steve Ditko too.
Basically, talent directories at Marvel and DC on their website.
Yeah. But it's amazing to me that for somebody kind of who was that well known and well regarded in the industry, it's like no one really knows him anymore. And I also coincidentally, what's the name? I gave the piece of paper away. There just came out 2 weeks ago. I ordered it from, it's a Tio Morrow's book. It's called like Tio Morrow's Collected Bullpen or something.
Is that a magazine format?
I think it's a collection of their magazines.
Yeah, is that the one that has an interview with Terry Beatty?
I don't know.
Okay, because I just saw...
I think it's a collection. I think they put out a magazine in the early 2000s called like Tio Morrow's Bullpen or something. I think it interviewed stuff.
Yeah, they refer to the company as just Two Morrows. So.
Oh yeah, Two Morrows, Tio Morrow. I don't know how the Two Morrows. That's it. Tio Morrow is the supervillain. Two Morrows is the publishing.
Right. The reason I asked that is I have Terry Beatty as a Facebook friend. I saw just the other day he made a post about there's a magazine they had coming out that had a Lost interview with him, and it also had Fred Hembeck in it, if I'm not mistaken. It had like a baseball player on the cover.
Heard on the Graphic Man channel. It must be true.
So I'm assuming that's the one that you're referring to.
Yeah, it also I saw it came out, and what I want to tell you was in it that's related to Jack Abel is Jack. I forget what year he died. It might have been 96, the same year Grunwald died.
Had all that stuff up.
It was right around then. But Jack Ash, I wasn't there that day, but he died in the bullpen.
Good.
He had a stroke or a heart attack or something.
In
He died right there.
1996 is when he
It was 96, the same year as Grunwald. But after that, Rick Parker, the longtime Marvel letterer and Beavis and Butthead artist, sort of organized this little thing where he had people do one-page tributes to Jack.
Okay.
I think there are 16 of them. I know Walter Simonson did one, Sergio Aragonés did one, and a few other, and they're actually published for the first time in this new T.O. Morrow's book.
Oh, nice. I'd like to see that just for the Sergio material in and of itself.
Yeah. And my friend Bunch, who I've mentioned here before,
a whole bunch of times.
He did one too, and his is like on the opposite page of Sergio. So he was thrilled. He was like, "I can die now. I'm on the my strip is opposite Sergio Aragonés."
That's I'd be happy if that happened to me.
Yeah. But I just ordered that at my comic shop, and Walter Simonson posted his on Twitter. If you want to see, look up Walter's Twitter, and you can find his strip for Jack.
I just saw Walter Weezy just announced the other day that they're not going to go to the Baltimore Comic-Con this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
But the best site I could find for information on Jack Abel was actually his Wikipedia page.
Oh, okay.
The other pages are kind of it doesn't really have a lot of information. So yeah, for a major creator, it doesn't seem to be a lot out there.
Here's a couple of Jack Abel things too. That I was lucky enough when I first started at Marvel, 1990. My desk was right next to Jack's, so I was hanging out and I'd talk to him all day, and that's how I met Steve Ditko the one time, because like I said, everyone stopped by to see Jack. So Steve Ditko actually stopped by to see Jack and talk to him. So I got to say hello to Steve Ditko, who looks like an old man Steve Ditko drawing as well.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you recognize Ditko when you saw him?
I did not recognize him when I saw him, but he does look like a Ditko draw. And he actually signed an autograph for my friend Bunch. Nice. Because once again, Bunch collects autographs just on like white pieces of paper. So he came up to, and I wasn't sure if I didn't know at this. I didn't know Ditko was anti. I don't think I knew. I don't remember if I knew Ditko's sort of reticence to be a star at this time, but I did notice that Jack gave him the high sign. Because Bunch was like, "Oh, can I get your autograph?" And like Ditko looked over at Jack, and Jack went. So he signed Bunch's piece of paper.
That's nice.
So I was like, I wonder if he would have signed it if Jack didn't give him the okay.
But Jack was older than Ditko. I am looking up the years that he was an anchor at Atlas. So I got stuff going back to 1952.
Wow.
Yeah, he mostly worked over Bill Benulis, who is a name that I see a lot in Atlas stuff, but I wouldn't recognize his art. Also, a lot of Gil Kane and Bob Forgione, the occasional Vic Carabotta.
Like I said, he inked Hulk 181 too. That I know.
Yeah, he came back to Marvel in the 70s, and I remember that's how I knew about Jack Abel. I remember seeing him in inker credits when I was growing up. At the time, I had no idea he was that old or that it was from the 1950s. But I didn't know that about Gil Kane either, and I didn't know that about Don Perlin.
Yeah, Gil Kane was a lot older than I thought he was in the 70s. I found out, I was like, oh, I didn't realize he'd been around for a while.
because Kane was innovating his own with his own style in the 70s, and you wouldn't expect that from a guy that had been in the business for over 20 years.
Yeah. Kirby wrote a prose novel.
Yeah. Somebody,
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody posted, they may have been Chuck Rosansky.
I think, it was Rosansky, yeah.
It was him, that they had, a printout or a hard copy of his script for the novel.
Yeah, Ross gave it to him.
Another thing I learned sitting next to Jack, I looked down one day. He was just, sitting there opening mail. And I just happened to look at, because I'm at a drawing table like this, which is up high. And he's kind of at a regular desk, which is like a foot lower.
Right.
So I just happened to look down as he's opening a mail. And he's opening a check from Roy Lichtenstein.
So he was like, Lichtenstein was finally paying royalties?
And I was like, you get a check from Roy Lichtenstein? He was like, it's not much, but it's something. So I'm guessing
that to Russ Heath instead.
I didn't even realize that Roy. Well, I didn't. That was a time you couldn't find out when. Now there's a website dedicated to all World. So I'm gonna have to look up which Jack Abel used, because I don't think I ever looked that up.
I'd be curious. I don't know if Jack could have told you if he had like a non-disclosure agreement or something like that. Why he was being paid, but like
he really didn't speak of it, but I assume it was a settlement of some kind. But I know everyone.
If it was a settlement, it may have had some sort of a gag order associated with it.
Right. Because we've seen, like I said, Russ Heath didn't get paid, but I don't know if Russ Heath ever.
He got part of some big time.
But yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up because there is a website that is dedicated to.
I remember that.
I forget the name of the website. You can probably put Roy Lichtenstein source material in Google and find it, because there's a guy who tracked down all the panels and credited it.
Right.
You must have had access to a great collection, because most of that stuff was from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Well, also, I'm no fan of Roy Lichtenstein at all. I'll just put that out there right up front. He just flat out plagiarized a lot of artists. But if you're doing investigative research and you get to the point where you're ticked off enough to where you get motivated, you'd be surprised at what you can find.
Yeah. Well, I think the main problem was Roy Lichtenstein's basic premise turned out to be wrong in terms of what he was doing. And Warhol was doing some of this too.
Yeah.
What the whole concept behind Roy Lichtenstein's paintings and some of Andy Warhol's, like soup cans and stuff, is that they were taking what they would call low art that was created by sort of unknown artists in the and sort of low and sort of the everyday commercial aspect of art. And making something out of them, making fine art out of it. It turned out to be true with like Warhol's soup cans and stuff, because we really don't have any clue who made the soup can designs and things like that. But it turned out completely not to be true with comic books. There were people who knew exactly where all that stuff came from, who knew what all the name, they knew where the bodies were buried, So Roy Lichtenstein's whole idea of taking anonymous work and making it into fine art doesn't quite work when the work's not anonymous. He ended up
music sampling in that regard, or like there's a question that's been brought up: are you an artist at that point? Or are you an editor?
I think you're. I think you're. Yeah, there's a little. I think you're an artist. It still counts as, but people are going to call you.
What Lichtenstein was doing is identical to what they do in music with sampling.
I don't think it's quite identical, but it's along. It's along this. But like I said, his whole idea was to take unknown a sampler, to take the work of unknown and unheralded commercial artists and turn it into fine art. Mm-hmm. The problem is when they're not actually, when it turns out they're not unknown and not unheralded.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It turns out that mostly what you're doing is using other people's images as grist for your mill.
Yeah. And especially because in Lichtenstein's case, you don't actually add anything of value to the original work, which is not the case in music sampling. I mean,
you can contextualize. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, but okay, it's easy to recognize that Africa Bambaataa took a sample from Kraftwerk's Trans-Europe Express to create Planet Rock, but Planet Rock is not Trans-Europe Express.
And do you remember
with Lichtenstein?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, Lichtenstein did it. It takes a Russ Heath panel, and it's just a Russ Heath panel blown up.
Yes. Yeah, the only thing that really changed is maybe the dot resolution on purpose.
But that's because we know who Russ Heath is and we know that original panel. Notice nobody says this stuff about Warhol's Brillo boxes and Warhol's Campbell soup cans because we really don't know, nor do we herald.
But the context in which you use the soup can design is different.
Well, that matters too. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you're counting on the artist being unknown and unheralded, and it turns out not to be true, that undermines what you're doing, and that I think has really undermined Roy Lichtenstein's work. In the long run, it has.
Paolo brought up the sampling thing. Do you remember when Tone Loc came out with the song Funky Cold Medina and he used an Eddie Van Halen riff?
Yep.
Eddie Van Halen came out later and said, "Why didn't you just pay me? I would have played something for him."
Yeah. Puff Daddy did that to Jimmy Page.
Then there's
he had Jimmy's permission though.
Right.
Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet, where they decided they were going to make all their samples unrecognizable.
Yeah. And then you had the KLF who were purposefully saying we are going to steal all those samples, but they did something a bit different because their track Doctor in the TARDIS is just a bunch of samples from Doctor Who, including the theme song.
And speaking of music, I think I'm going to have to point this out. This is a new comic called "What's the Furthest Place from Here?" And it's by the Four Kids Walk Into the Bank guys. Remember when that was hot for a second? What are their names? Rosenberg and Boss.
Don't remember.
Not ringing.
But the music tie-in is there is going to be a $15 deluxe format complete with a 7-inch vinyl single.
So we're back to flexi discs again, right?
No, I don't think they're flexi discs. I think it's actual vinyl single.
Okay.
Yeah, 7-inch.
Because it doesn't say flex. That's what I was trying to figure out. Because it doesn't say flexi disc. It says 7-inch vinyl single.
That's standard size for vinyl.
45,
singles.
Right?
45s. Yeah.
Yeah. The first, and I think they said they teamed up with a band named, who is it? I can't remember. What's the band's name? I think they're going to do it for each issue. Okay, it's bundled with the record, which will have its own sleeve, also drawn and designed by Tyler, and a download card to get MP3s of the songs for more digital-minded readers. Okay, I might get that just as a. Let me see who the band is, if there's anyone we ever heard of. But I found that an interesting thing because they say this. The comic is about what's the name? What's the Furthest Place from Here? As a post-apocalyptic story where only kids survived the apocalypse.
Right.
And they don't know why, and they're so young that they don't remember the time before the apocalypse, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. We'll see what the rest of it is.
Kind of like the Andromeda Strain.
But I think some of the kids live in a record store, so that's his tie-in with music.
Gotcha.
Oh, but we're so excited because Blake Schwarzenbach, who was in a band called Jawbreakers, so that's the guy who's doing the music for him. I've never heard of Jawbreaker or Blake Schwarzenbach, but that's no surprise. I'm not that into music.
I haven't heard of him either.
So I might actually order that first issue with the 7-inch vinyl single just for the heck of it.
Be careful what you wish for. I'll tell you why. Years ago, there was a small regional chain called the Record Exchange, which had a store here. And they sold new albums and used albums both. Mm-hmm. They had a sampler that they would come out with once a month, CD.
Right.
And all kinds of different, well-known artists, local artists, the whole wide variety. And one of these that I got had an unreleased song by Bjork. And it was the worst thing I have ever heard in my entire life.
I'm not actually expecting to like the music.
This goes beyond not liking. This is active hate at this point.
In the late 90s, I used to have a subscription to, what was the name of it? CMJ.
I remember
College Music Journal that came with
that. I think the Record Exchange I was talking about, I think they carried that on their.
I used to enjoy out of the whole, CD has 20 songs on it. I'd probably like 4 of the songs, but that was okay with me because I was looking for new songs. Cultural intellectual property has always mostly been a dead corpse, thankfully. That's a Lichtenstein. They will never beat Tower Records with the 45 in the comic. I still have 3.
That's
Captain
nice.
America. Yeah, those.
What am I having the Conan one?
I remember. I never had. I don't know if I ever had any.
Sure. I didn't.
Pretty sure you can find them. You can find the recordings on YouTube.
Yeah, you can.
I didn't have any comics that came with records, but I had little book sets that came out. Like Disney would produce some of them. Mm-hmm. I remember having a Robin Hood book and a G.I. Joe book, and the G.I. Joe one was pretty cool.
And I remember seeing illustrated books for children with cassettes.
Yeah, in the 90s, I got the Justice League of America album. I think I got it in the early 90s. I think it was released in the 60s or the 70s. It was in the cutout bin. I'd never seen it before. It was like a relic to me when I bought it. I was like, where the heck did this come from? And it was, you can call the roll of Justice League. They had theme songs and then a little story that went along with it.
So it's kind of like the DC equivalent to the Mary Marvel Marching Society.
Sort of, but this was like a professionally released long-playing record. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube now. And the funny thing was, it sounded like they were session musicians, but they sounded like they were, pre-rock and. They sounded like session musicians who've been around since the 50s, recording in the 60s. They were recording sort of this. The music was very swinging 60s, only filtered through 1950s musicians kind of thing.
Like Pat Boone?
Yeah, kind of, sort of like the very, very square, trying to be hip music.
That's Pat Boone.
Well, but professionally done. Good stuff. Like, and there was like Metamorpho.
Yeah, that's perfect for DC.
Yeah, yes. The element.
Professionally done, 50s style, trying to be 60s hip.
I think Robert Crumb he's done like collections of old blues stuff that he's curated.
Well, I know he's done drawings of old blues artists because Bill.
Yeah, I think he's also
where he left off.
Right, I think he's also curated record albums.
Yeah, I didn't realize he'd done that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember that, but I'm not 100%.
You would think that Harvey Pekar would have been the perfect person to curate some sort of record album thing.
Yeah,
maybe nobody ever thought about it.
But one of the funniest bits of like I said, you have to look up "Call the Roll of the Justice League" because at one point they have everything like Superman here and they have Batman here. They give him this real sort of Brooklyn accent.
So they give him the Things accent, right?
Yeah, and then they obviously did not have a woman in the studio that day. So they went Wonder Woman, and you hear a guy go, here. He sure does. Cheap serenaders. I've got a couple.
I can just see the cheese dripping off this thing.
Oh, it is wonderful. They get like there's a metamorpho, the strong as iron and homely as sin. Metamorpho. There's some great theme songs. We used to sing them in the bullpen.
It's a shame they didn't have
that was you being against the man. We're singing DC songs working at Marvel.
I am Fumo, the fire giant. I forget which one. I think it was Metamorpho fought Fumo, the fire giant, and Screech.
Wow.
But yeah, really classic JLA album. There's a book out now that collects all of Crumb's record work. Ah, okay. But yeah, I might actually spend the $15 to get the first issue of this with the record and the MP3 download. And you know, it's funny. I was sitting there reading the name of it. It's another one of those long named comics. What's the furthest place from here? And I was like, and that apostrophe in there, I was like, I think I would have named it What is the furthest place from here? And that's like just like taking I was like saying it back and forth. I'm like, what's the furthest place from here? Makes it sound fast. And like is a fast question. What's the furthest place from here? But what is the furthest place from here? Makes it sound a little more contemplative. And I was like, which way would I
think if you made the word is in bold letters or italics or something like that, that would have put that.
That would have changed the meaning again, putting emphasis on is. What is the furthest place from here? But yeah, I found that.
Funny how you construct a sentence with just 4 or 5 words, and depending on which one you emphasize, makes all the difference in the world.
The one I heard, the example I heard for that is what was it? John didn't sell Mary the car. John didn't sell Mary the car.
Right.
John didn't sell Mary the car. John didn't sell Mary the car.
Just sell her the car already.
John didn't sell Mary the car. Is that each? You put the emphasis on each word, it changes the meaning of the sentence. How crazy is that?
Very much does.
Yeah. John didn't sell Mary the car.
I was watching, I think it may have been a documentary movie about language or something, but they brought on George Carlin to explain that you can take common words in a language, and they were talking about English, and just everyday words, and you can string together enough of them, and you'll come up with a sentence that nobody else has ever said before.
Yeah.
And George Carlin used this to illustrate the point. He said, "I'm skipping to the softball game to beat up Hitler's widow." Yeah, I would say nobody has ever uttered those words in that sequence before. That's very true. So.
And I recommend Crumb's Book of Genesis too. It is just a masterwork. It is brilliant. Yeah, but it is such a master. He just takes the Book of Genesis and turns it into a comic with the actual words from the Book of Genesis. Though he's not paraphrasing. He's not doing anything. Yeah, it's on a bridge too, I believe. But it is just such a masterwork. It'll make you love the Book of Genesis.
I remember seeing house ads for, I think Joe Kubert did a Bible.
Oh, I remember that from DC in the 70s, right? I've never seen that.
I haven't either.
I've never seen that. Huh.
I saw some pencil drawings that Simon Bisley did that are religious, Christian oriented. And he's not using that really gonzo Frazetta mixed with Hunter S. Thompson style that he normally uses. And they were really impressive. I was like, I like this style much better than I like his normal style.
Huh. Interesting. I picked up a #1 this week, right off the shelf. Impossible Jones. What is this? Scout Comics. And at first, I thought this was a Michael Allred cover.
It does kind of look like one from a distance. Yeah.
But it's not. It's just a guy who kind of has got some Michael Allred in him.
Gotcha.
And it really,
even though that font is a little hard to read, I like it. The logo on the cover.
Yeah, it's got the. Let me show a little of this art off.
It's very superficially similar to Allred. I see a lot of Michael Ivanoming there.
It does remind me of Allred.
The character designs are definitely Allred, but the rest isn't. I mean,
it's got a kind of clean line.
What the character's done also reminds me of the Heartbreakers. And I can't remember the name of the creator that did that.
There might be more Bruce Timm and Ivy Hernandez in there than Allred in the actual drawing.
That's a very Love and Rockets hairdo on that one lady.
Yeah. Now that but it was sort of the Allred like what cover they call. And also what's interesting is this is a matte cover. I don't know why they chose a matte finish cover with glossy insides. It's kind of like I just found that an interesting choice. And Sleepy Reader said he got another Scout comic that had the same glossy cover. Yeah, the guy who wrote Impossible Jones wrote Harley Quinn. The comic or who is this? Who's this? Oh, Carl Kessel. Yeah, it's got a bit of a Harley Quinn. It's very much. But that was his. His wife has some Michael Allred.
More than I'm happy with that.
It kind of reads a little like a Michael Allred comic too, in that it's sort of like the Atomics in that it's a fun superhero kind of book, but not really. I mean, it's not. The only thing I can compare it to is Michael Allred because that's the only thing kind of like it, even though it's its own thing, really. And it might sort of be like Batman Adventures too, except it's got an adult warning, parental advisory, so it's not a kid's comic. And she is kind of like Plastic Man. She gains some sort of Plastic Man powers, and there's these gang of superheroes here too. So overall, it was a fun read. I'm glad I picked. As I was deciding which first issues to pick up this week, there's a couple that interested me. I think I picked a good one.
I'd actually be interested in reading that. That's the first time I can say that for
Impossible Jones.
So,
for a little while. Check out him. There's Carl Kessel, and who's the artist? Let me look that up again. David Hahn on pencils, Tony Avina on colors, Comic Craft on the lettering. So I guess there's no inks on this. It looks like it's inked because it's very dark.
Thank you to Terrence for picking up the slack for me there. So.
Someone has to fill the gaps when Scott is on screen versus in the comments. Making the cheesy jokes. But the other, well, it's not actually a first issue I picked up. I picked up a third issue because I was like, what the heck? I'm going to pick it. It looked interesting. I'd never seen it before, never heard of it. I'm like, I'll pick up the third issue, and there's another weird cover in that. It's like it's got a gray film over it. Dose is the name of it.
That almost looks like a Rick Vetch kind of motif.
It's got a little. It's got a little of that. It's got a little. The insides very much have early Eastman and Laird because it's this crazy grayscale.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that looks pretty neat.
Yeah.
I don't like that page as much as the other one, but still, I like the grayscale.
And it was just this crazy, crazy story. I don't know what the larger, like I said, I picked up issue 3. I didn't even need issue 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of understanding this. It just wakes up with whoever this guy is, like, and it's an adult situations book too. Whoever this guy is, he finds himself tied up with his head in a box and strapped to this big X, and he thinks it's one of his ex-girlfriends who's got him tied up and wants to, have sex with him. But then she pulls out a chainsaw and he's like, "Ooh, I don't think so." But it turns out it is his ex-girlfriend. She was just messing with him with a chainsaw. And it's this like cyberpunk sci-fi, like the girlfriend's got this big metal arm. That's what the chainsaw is attached to. And they just have this crazy roll in the hay as they're punching each other with their metal arms and things. And then there's this one bit where all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, this is definitely one comic. Buttons are correct. It's in a 50. This is one that Comic Crack should pick up too. There's this one bit after they're fighting and they're about to fool around. She's like, "Oh, do you want to do some float?" We lost Scott.
Scott. Is that one story only?
Yeah, it's just one. I assume, yeah, it's only one story. I assume it was continued and it's going to go on because it didn't quite end. It just kind of stopped.
Because with a title like that, I kind of expect that thing to be an anthology.
Yeah, it's not. It was. I like I said, issue 3 was perfectly readable on its own too. But anyway, she's like, "Ooh, do you want to do some float?" And you're like, he's like, "Sure, I'll do some float. I'm back. What should I grab? Dose." This is kind of up your alley. This is issue 3. I never picked up issue 1 or 2. I saw 3 on the shelf. Dose by Ellis and Gibeah by It's Alive Comics. I don't know where this came from. Showed up in my comic shop. I'm like, I'll get issue 3. But anyway, at one point,
It's Alive. It's those guys. That guy that's been reprinting Glansman stuff. Sam Glansman.
Okay. I didn't realize that was in. Stories by Sean Ellis. Art by John Gebbia. Gebbia. And like I said, "Oh, you want to do some float?" He's like, "Sure, I'll do some float." And you're like, you, the reader, is like, "What the hell is float?" And he's like, "These pills are awful big." And she's like, "That's because they're a suppository. You got to shove them up your ass." And then they float. That's what the drug is. You're high and you float around the apartment and fool around. But and then all other crazy stuff went on. But I really enjoyed this one, I have to say. It was a lot of fun. I'll buy more issues if I can find them. Float, Tofu City Street Festival. But yeah, it was just kind of gonzo crazy comic. First one of those I've read in a while like that, where it's like, just like I said, I don't even know what the overall story is, but I didn't need to know. Mm-hmm.
Well, you can buy every issue of those from the It's Alive website.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
They're going for $5.
I've never heard of It's Alive.
They have variant covers.
Oh, wow. Everybody, even Dose has variant covers?
Uh-huh. There's an anthology here called Air War Stories. It reprints Sam Glansman's aviation comics.
Okay.
I think these were published at Charlton.
Ah, all right. Charlton stuff is all over the place. Some of it in the public domain.
Mm-hmm. There's something here called Breathers.
Huh.
And there's a one shot with Kona, Monarch of Monster Isle.
One shot with what?
Kona, Monarch of Monster Isle.
Oh. Conan?
Kona.
Oh, Kona. Oh, okay. Interesting. Like I said, I've never heard of them. This just showed up on my comic, and I was looking through like this week's number ones to try and find a couple things to buy off the shelf.
Graphic novel, Private Beach by David Hahn. Family Man by Jerome Charin and Joe Staten.
Kona was a Dell comic. I guess they're going all public domain stuff.
Yeah, and they got a reprints from other stuff here. Mercy by J.M. DeMatteis and Paul Johnson. Last of the Dragons by Carl Potts, Danny O'Neill, and Terry Austin.
That was their. They must be reprinting that. That was their epic comic or epic graphic novel or something.
Yeah. Also, there's a reprint here of Vertigo's Seekers into the Mystery.
Wow.
Yeah, they got a lot of stuff on their web store. The Boss Chronicles.
The Boss
World-
Chronicles. That was another epic one, right? It's creator owned.
Yeah. World Without End by Jamie Delano and John Higgins. Don Simpson's Border Worlds.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, the Silver Medal
Mercy
cover
with
by
Vertigo.
Trina Robbins. They still have Red Ranger. These are older. They were. I remember they came out a few years ago, but they're still here. Sex Rumors Dope by Trina Robbins.
That's from the 70s.
Yeah. So this.
I guess they're keeping a lot of that creator-owned stuff in print.
Yeah, they got a lot of different stuff in here. You can go through their entire catalog. If you buy one a day, it's going to take you a couple of months to go through everything.
Wow, I'm gonna have to look through it and see what's there, just for the heck. Because, like I said, I really enjoyed Dose. It was what comic kayfabe might call an outlaw comic kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely different than your. Kona is a Portuguese for a cunt. Sorry for the childish remark.
It is. And there's this compact SUV by Hyundai. It's called Kona internationally, but here it's called Kauai.
Ah. Huh. And my next one, Ramon, I was adding some things to. Remember last week when I was saying we need some new terms for some new common terms for like rare comic collector.
Mm-hmm.
A rare comic collector is someone who, they start at spending $5,000 on a comic.
Mm-hmm.
So I had rare comic collector. Then of course key issue collectors.
Yep.
We all know what that. Then I was trying to think because this comic, I got Radiant Black number 8 this week. Right, that's number 8. Number 8 this week, which is good. I'm enjoying Radiant Black. It's sort of a superhero. They said it's a cross between. It's kind of Power Rangers-ish, but I don't know the Power Rangers because they all got these multicolored suits, and they're fighting this guy who they don't know anything about their powers. They're fighting this guy who wants to destroy Earth for some reason. They don't even know why, blah, blah. But it's a good series. But how it ties into my list is when coming up with, sort of accurate terms for the different types of comic collectors, I don't know if there should be, and also, these terms all have overlap. You can be 3 or 4 of them. It doesn't matter. There's just, nobody's one thing, or most people aren't one thing. But we all know what key issue collectors are. They're the ones who buy key issues or what they hope will be key issues or whatever new key issues are created this week. But it was like, I don't know if there's enough distinction between variant collectors and key issue collectors, or they're the same thing kind of. And I bring that up because one of the regulars who was at the comic shop this week buying this was also buying all of the variants to Radiant Black. I don't think there were any expensive variants. They were all cover price ones. But I was like, if you're buying all of the variants to Radiant Black number 8, you're not buying them because you're speculating, I don't think. I think you're buying them because you want all the variants. So it's like, is that a separate, distinct category?
No, I think they are. There is a speculation element there, and I would put the people who collect variants in there with a lot of overlap with people who collect keys because they're expecting interest in a drought or in a
could just be obsessive too.
Yeah.
But at least he doesn't there is one guy who comes to the comic shop who's clearly obsessive, who searches through every copy to find the most perfect one of whatever he's buying. Nice guy, but it's like, can't help it. It's been doing it all his life.
Yeah, you want to see that guy as a conniption. You pick up a comic, any comic from the shelf, and you start doing this.
Could the completist collector, that could be its own category. I'm gonna have to write that one down, because the completist collector would want all those variants, but he would be different than like the key issue variant collector.
I see the completist as having more of a literary interest, because he wants to have, I would say the completist wants to have all the comics in a series, and most likely guest appearances in other series.
Right. There is that too, but he's done that once or twice with a comic where I really want to support the book or the creators. I can understand that. So I don't know if variant collector really needs like that type of variant collector really needs a subcategory, just because I think like I said, if you're buying all the variants to Radiant Black #8, I think that's a rare thing. I think that's rarer than the key issue / variant collector. And the other one, of course, which makes perfect sense, that I didn't think of last week when Graphic Man was talking about it. Graphic Man is a back issue collector. That's all we need. He collect, and that would make me like a new comic collector, because I don't really buy back issue. Like I said, you don't have to be only one thing. It's like I buy back issues on rare occasion, but I'm really a new issue collector, a sort of Wednesday warrior.
Yeah. I describe myself.
Again? Hello.
Hey, internet
connection dropped. Well, I have no idea.
But then there's also what Paolo might fall into, which we're talking about my categories that I was coming up with last week, sort of distinct categories for comic book collectors. When I mentioned last week, I had the thought that we need the term rare comic collector.
Right.
Because that's a completely different thing than a key issue collector. And then I just said, Graphic Man is a back issue collector. I'm a new issue collector. Then I think there's also a collected edition collector. They don't. They don't buy. They don't buy.
I don't really discriminate. I collect a little of everything.
Yeah.
Like you can be all these things. You can be any one of these things at any time.
There is a specialized collected edition collector who wants the oversized omnibus with all the bells and whistles.
That'd be a subgenre of collected.
And then there's guys that just collect artist editions.
Yeah. They would be sort of subgenres of the collected edition collector, but makes me wonder if the Radiant Black guy does that for other books. Yeah, that is pretty. Like I said, I don't think he was getting the ratio editions. I think they were all that. Scott, this came up because I was wondering if we needed a kit. While I was buying my Radiant Black there, one of the regulars was buying Radiant Black, and this is issue 8, along with all the variants. And I was like, nobody's speculating on Radiant Black #8. There's got like I can see people buying variants of the first issue, the second issue, but the 8th issue of Radiant Black, I think by now no one's speculating on it. Right. So, but we decided there could be many, like Comic Crack was telling us that he did something like that when he wanted to support the creators. Like I think he's doing that with with Red Room, because he wants to support the creators, even though he's not even reading the comic.
Especially if it's like a crowdfunded book and you have options that become available that way. Makes sense.
I have to say, I haven't done many comics on crowdfunding only because that has turned into the most expensive way to buy a comic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting a comic off of Kickstarter and you just want the comic, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're interested in all the other stuff that comes with the comic, more power to you. But if you're just looking to buy a comic costs $20.
It can, depending on what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's minimum. I haven't seen any comics lately for like with shipping, and actually you can buy the digital comic for $4 or $5, which is actually fine with me.
Yeah.
But if you want an actual physical printed comic, you're spending minimum $20. So it's kind of it's like the most
once you factor the shipping in, that's what really kicks it in.
It's only worth it if it's a 100-page book hardcover.
Something like so Red Room Swamp Thing did it with Layla Starr for a couple of issues as well. Yeah.
And there are some creators that I wouldn't mind paying, full price like that. And there are other ones.
Oh yeah. I'm sure there are for me, but like occasionally I get ads for Kickstarter in my social media feed.
Right.
And the comic looks nice. I'm like, I click on the ad just to check it out. Brings me to Kickstarter. And I'm always like, oh man, I'm not spending $20 on one comic, a pig in a poke.
Right.
It's just kind of like, I can't do it. Especially since I go to the comic shop every week and buy, I bought those 2 new comics off the rack this week. And speaking of expensive comics that might not be worth it, I picked up The Last Ronin #4 today in this Golden Age square-bound format. And this is a $9 comic. Nicely done. This is the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing I've ever read. Besides a random issue here or there, maybe. Because I was too old when the Turtles came out.
Right.
But, and what I did when, like, I always, like, when there's some comic out like this, which is $9 an issue, and I thought it was 4 issues. I forgot it's 5. I like when I waffled back and forth on putting this on my pull list when it was first announced, because I was kind of like, it's so expensive. I don't really like square bound, but I liked the oversized format, and I was and I always kind of go 9 times 5. Is this worth $45 to me?
Right. And are they coming out with a hardcover later on that probably costs less than that?
And most often the answer is no. But for some reason with this, I went, you know what? I kind of want to read the last Turtles book, this thing that they're trying to make special. And I knew it would be coming out, or, I knew they'd be coming out with 1 issue every 4 months. So that makes it, spreads out the cost a lot. So, but I'm enjoying it. But even after I read it, I go, was that really worth $9? And I don't think I can recommend it as being worth $9.
That's one of the things I noticed when I was reading Bone when it was being produced. And it was an expensive book then. It was like $250, $295, whatever it was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book, and I'm not knocking it in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me maybe 10 minutes to get through it.
Yeah.
Some issues more than others. It was just this one particular one that was a little bit light on word panels, and I was like, it took me 10 minutes to read that.
Yeah, some are like that. You're like, But that's why I read everything twice. I noticed in the new preview, some of the image books have added in the description self-cover. Oh, interesting.
What does self-cover mean?
Self-cover is when there's no cover stock, which they've been doing for Marvel and DC have been doing for years and years. It's this.
I hate that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I don't like it either.
I didn't find anywhere that explains that self-cover is any cover where there's no cover stock. It's the same, like I said, let me see if...
same paper stock as the interior.
Yeah. Radiant Black is self-covered. This cover is the same exact paper stock as this. So there's no... most Marvel and DC comics are like that. A lot of Image comics are like that. And I'm not a fan. I prefer a cover stock on mine. Like DC sells the comics with a cover stock for $1 extra with cardstock cover. I'm guessing the inside's that's what it is.
I want to pay $1 extra for it, but it's.
I would not either want to pay $1 extra for it.
I've also noticed with self-stock covers, if the background on it's black, it's going to show fingerprints.
Oh yeah, because the paper is as thin and cheap as it gets.
When I got that last issue of Con Crew from the French publisher, it was a real nice thick. I mean, it wasn't like hardcover, but it was a thicker than normal stock. And like, oh yeah, this is nice. This is what every comic should feel like when you're reading it.
Dose is self-covered. I'm guessing that Impossible Jones isn't because it's a matte cover. Oh yeah, this has got a cover stock.
Yeah.
But that's a selling point for me.
Yeah, I noticed a bunch of several Dark Horse books now have soft covers too.
Yeah, they're almost all. Most of the industry now is self-covered. But that actually, if I'm choosing between two comics and I can't decide which one, and one is self-covered, I always choose the one that's not self-covered.
I would too. That's interesting. I haven't read this yet. Let me take a look at it.
Marvel DC, the majority of the industry, the vast majority of the industry is self-covered.
Well, this is interesting because this copy of Usagi Yojimbo from IDW feels like a non-self-cover, but the interior pages, which I had noticed because I haven't read this particular issue, are a little bit thicker and glossier than normal, but not ridiculously so. It's like it's like half self-cover and half not.
The only reason Spawn is on my pull list is because it's $2.99.
That's $3 more than I would pay for
it. I don't blame you. It's not particularly good. But when we were talking before about supporting something, that's what I'm doing.
Gotcha. I showed this in the Graphic Man channel, and this is a format that I find a bit interesting because this is a collected edition of a comic that came out in U.S. size in Brazil, and and it's a book. It's a trade paperback made for the newsstand, and everything about it screams like magazine publisher who wanted to put out a book.
Some of the epic graphic novels are kind of formatted like that too.
Yeah, because it's a cardstock cover that. It's a paper stock that is normally not used by magazine publishers because that's what these guys did. They were a magazine publisher, not just comics.
I'm guessing technically that's not even a trade paperback. Most people don't really know what trade paperback means.
Yes, that's right.
Trade paperback is actually a paperback for a specific trade, i.e. comic books. So it's a different size than a standard paperback. So that might actually be a standard paperback if it's a different size.
It's the size of US. It's the size of US comic.
Oh, it is the size of a US comic, and it is
which in Brazil a US comic is in Brazil a US comic was considered at the time deluxe format. Just by putting it out in US size, it was deluxe format.
Right.
But because it was an epic series, it would always come out as deluxe size. The thing is, the kind of paper stock that I use for this is not what you'd expect to find in a regular book. I wouldn't say a regular book, but a trade paperback. Let's imagine that this was a technical book, or they were reprinting magazine articles it's more like they were reprinting magazine articles in a book format.
Gotcha.
Because this is not the type of cover that you normally find in a book. It's not quite it's thick, but it's not as good quality.
Okay.
It's like a magazine on steroids, right?
Is there printing on the inside front cover?
Yeah, but they only put out the creators' names.
Okay.
Because there's printing on the outside, on the inside, the back cover. Wait, sorry, put that, because this is the type of indicia that you'd see in the magazines.
Right.
This is in spite of this being a book, this is a periodical.
Because I've noticed, I don't know what it is specifically, but I've noticed the cheapest printing often comes with either nothing on the inside, back, and front cover, or just a black, like right there. There's like nothing. That's like the cheapest form of printing somehow, when you don't print on the inside, front, and back covers.
Yeah, but they needed this needed an indicia, and they were not going to waste a page on indicia.
Right.
So, inside the back cover.
But that might be the only thing they can print there.
And even the paper used in the pages, it's like contemporary TV guide paper.
Okay.
So that's why I think that it doesn't quite qualify as a trade paperback. It's a trade paperback made by magazine publishers to put on newsstands, and it has a shelf life.
So it's kind of like a magazine on steroids.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, trade paperbacks are a specific size for a specific trade. That's how they got that name.
Yeah, and then in the book market now, what you consider a regular paperback novel is called a mass market paperback.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of MMPB.
Yeah. Lots.
And here's one that's been trucking along.
Yeah.
Here's one that's been trucking along. It's on its 20th issue now, Once and Future. And I don't know, when I got last issue 19, I remember saying I was confused by the ending, because it was one of those endings where somebody shows up at the end, and I'm like, am I supposed to know who that is?
Right.
You know, when you read a comic that you don't read, like, even though I read this one, and someone shows up at the end, you're like, this would be a lot more interesting if I knew who that guy who showed up at the end was.
Right.
And I'm like, I think that's King Arthur showing up at the end, but King Arthur has already appeared, and he's been the main villain of the story. It turns out the Norman King Arthur showed up at the end. It's been the Saxon King Arthur, since a lot of the creatures in this are based on English myth and stuff like that.
Right.
So now we didn't know it was the Saxon King Arthur who was there. So now the Norman King Arthur shows up, and he shows up with Guinevere and with Lancelot, because they were French creations.
Yes, they were.
So now we've got two King Arthurs who both think the other is the fake King Arthur, and they're the one who's going to free the land. I found that an interesting twist.
Interesting.
Once I finally got it.
I would assume the Saxon one is probably based on what people consider to be a historical equivalent for King Arthur.
Yes, he's.
And then the Norman one is the literary King Arthur.
Right. Whatever that guy's name is. But they're in Merlin's like, we're in trouble now because they've got Lancelot. And Lancelot is the greatest knight of the land. So.
Yeah, Lancelot's no pushover.
Right. So now they got to figure out what they're going to do. But I found that an interesting twist. There's the.
Yeah, I'll give him credit. At least that's different.
Yeah, there's the Norman King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone.
He looks nothing Norman whatsoever.
Yeah, they all look fairy tale
planets. He didn't look like come from Norman England.
Yeah, they all look, pardon me, comic book and fairy tale-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed. Good issue, very good stuff. Like I said, all of all of England is trapped in this fairyland now. Since what kept things in check was nobody knew about them. Then the prime minister came on and told everybody about them, which meant sort of all of England entered this half fairyland, half England. So it messed everything up. But good. Yeah. It's amazing when 20 issues is a long-running series now.
Right.
Now I have a question: are the mythical creatures soccer fans?
I don't know.
They have to be. It's England.
They have to be.
I wonder when soccer was introduced to England,
though. There are reports of something similar to
at least in the
1400s. Yeah, they're around that time. Yeah,
but both Saxon and literary King Arthur before that.
Yep. Yeah, but if modern England moves into a mythical dimension,
right,
it has to take soccer with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, half of it. I'm sure Wembley Stadium's still there. But it's like in one of the plot points in this too is they ended up it's like some things existed in this fairy realm and some things in the real world, and now they're all merged, and they were trying to figure out where to go, and they decided to go back to the old lady's, the lead character, the old lady's home, or near her home it was, because that's the Grail Castle. And Arthur can't find the Grail Castle. So there's all sorts of other stuff in the Grail Castle, but they're like, we'll deal with that when it comes to it. We can make deals with the other stuff.
Yeah.
But King Arthur can't find us here because he can't find the Grail Castle. I found that an interesting little twist, too.
I'll have to wait for Galahad to come along to find that.
Well, I think that was one of the... What happened before everything went to Fairyland. You could find things and affect the story by becoming those things. So what it was she raised her grandson to be a pure innocent knight kind of thing. Sure. So he took the Galahad role. So when all things started going to hell, he was able to find the Grail because in the story, he had the Galahad role. So there's some interesting stuff in there too with people playing parts in the story. And you could accidentally find yourself playing a part in the story.
I wonder if Kevin Matchstick will show up in the end with his baseball bat.
There you go. A Grendel TV show. How about that?
Ooh,
how crazy is that?
There's got to be a mirror universe King Arthur with a goatee.
There you go.
I wish, God Almighty, I wish Star Trek would get away from the mirror universe.
I love the idea of Trek nerds going to Renaissance fairs.
Yeah, okay once, but when they keep going back to it time and time, it's like it's getting old, guys. It's like leave the time travel to Doctor Who.
Ooh, the Doctor.
I'll get off.
Since it's British, the Doctor has to show up. The Doctor can travel anywhere in the multiverse, and he always goes to Britain.
Yeah, he always goes to Britain in the 20th century, and they're shooting all the scenes in a rock quarry.
Yeah.
And in modern Doctor Who, if you see a set that has plastic hanging down, you know something bad's going to happen.
And speaking of mythology, here's Norse mythology, Volume 2, number 4, and it's as good as every other issue. This is just such a terrific series.
It is. It's really good.
Craig Russell adapting Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology book, and there are just tales so well told.
Yeah, I love everything about that except the cover logo.
And in this one, once again, Mark Buckingham is our artist working over working over Craig Russell's layouts. Mm-hmm. And this one is all about Thor, Loki, and a human who can run really fast in the land of the giants.
Does Buckingham do the entire issue?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Really good. He does a really good job. And as an aside, I recently found out that Norse giants weren't always giants. Giant didn't mean the same thing to the ancient Norse that it did to us. So some of them were, in fact, giants, but a lot of them weren't. But they were still giant. It's called giants. So hence Loki comes from the giants, but he's, human size.
Right.
But so, because, in comics, the Norse giants have always been giants, but they're not actually.
Some of the ways that we look at, it's the word I'm looking for, traditional views of, especially Norse mythology, don't always jibe with the source material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard Wagner kind of ruined it for us.
I mean, Thor in the original source material was not the Jack Kirby long-haired blonde
right.
nature boy, for lack of a better word. He's like a big, fat, red-headed slob.
There's a YouTube channel I follow. What's it? The Dragon Tavern, I think it's called now. Mm-hmm. Used to be the Slim Yeezus. It's a guy, I think he's Irish. And he tells his family stories. All the old he tells a lot of Celtic and Old Norse stories. He tells his family, the stuff that's been handed down to him. He tells those stories, and he also tells the stories as they're in books and have been handed down to other people. But really interesting, all the myths and tales and stuff of Ireland and Scandinavia and stuff like that.
Yeah, Scandinavian especially, there's a long history of oral tradition.
Oh, yeah.
One time, I don't know how to pronounce the word. I'm going to do a Tim here. I think it's Kavala, which is a Finnish myth. They were trying to get recordings from elder people who had passed it down to their generations orally before it got lost for, permanent. Right. So... But yeah, there's a long history, that kind of thing in Northern Europe.
I think it was on that channel where I learned that giants weren't always giant. And then I read it somewhere else just recently, too.
Right.
It's like, look at that.
It's commonly thought of in trolls in modern fantasy really comes from Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the way trolls are illustrated by people like Arthur Rackham and John Bauer, completely different.
Mm-hmm. And I think dwarves were different too because of Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that.
Tolkien.
The dwarves in the North mythology. What was that?
Gary Gygax used, even though he doesn't admit it in many major... Yeah, Gary Gygax always made a point of saying that Tolkien was not a huge influence on Dungeons and Dragons when it in fact was. Maybe not as big as Robert E. Howard, but it was because they used the word Hobbit in an early TSR publication, and they got a cease and desist letter from the Tolkien estate. Said, no, you have to change it. So they changed it to the word halfling.
Right. But once something gets in your circle of awareness, it appears everywhere.
That modern version of what we consider to be dwarfs now really comes from Tolkien.
Yeah. Because the dwarves are kind of a little different even in this.
They can be different from country to country.
Building things.
Yeah, and so can elves too. I mean, this modern, kind of like blonde version of the Submariner type of elf, that comes directly from Tolkien. Going back thousands and thousands of years, I mean, elves could look anywhere from like little imp-like things to, pick your poison.
I'd say
word. So
we should do a Reed, Rip, and Slab Golden Age version.
Oh, God. If it's that Jungle comic we read a few months ago, I'm ripping that.
I specifically put no Jungle comics in
okay.
To make it easier for us.
It is not giving. Let me try this again because it's not giving me my. Yeah, it's right there. Oh, I had it hidden. Duh. I had the window hidden, so of course it couldn't see it. Let's go back to share. Here we go. We have got Master Comics. I think that's 42. Dollman number 7. And Air Fighters 13.
Oh.
Slab Master Comics, Rip Dollman, read Air Fighters.
I think I'm tempted to go in that order too.
Now, why are you ripping Dollman?
Hate Dollman.
You hate Dollman. I have
Totally.
no opinion on Dollman.
I have no opinion on Dollman, but seeing him being hoisted by his back of his neck by a giant pelican.
You know what? You guys have talked me into reading Dollman.
No, I don't care what the pelican is doing to him. Just the fact that the pelican has him makes him lame.
And that is Captain Marvel Jr., right?
Yeah.
Who Elvis based his jumpsuit look on. Elvis was a huge Captain Marvel Jr. fan.
They also had a little logo that had TCB that had the lightning bolt in it.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Why is the pelican there from Dollman? Why is all the pink on the Air Fighters cover when it should be on that pelican from Dollman?
Mm.
See, now you want to read Dollman to find out. I'm going to read Dollman. Slab Master No, what? I'm gonna read Dollman, slab Air Fighters, and tear up Master Comics.
You're just being contrarian.
I was gonna slab Master Comics, then I was like, I just don't like that logo and name, Master Comics. I'd rather have Air Fighters hanging on my wall with that cover.
I'd probably rather read a Golden Age war book than I would a superhero book. It depends, but. Why is that sky on Air Fighters a gradiated pink?
Yeah.
To pop off. By the way, I think these are all from 1943, by the way. I think that's
that pink needs to be on the Dollman cover because there's more blue there.
It needs to be contrast. Yeah.
And Air Fighters, that pink, the plane is orange, yellow, and red. The Nazi aliens uniform is purple.
I have a hard time with older comics, especially when the sky background is different in like 3 consecutive panels. It'll be red on one, blue on another, and like pink or green or what have you. It's like, were the colors drunk that day, or did they just run out of a certain color and that's all they had to use on the next panel?
Once again, this might bring us back to. There was no colorists on these. It was just the color separator doing whatever they wanted.
That would actually make more sense now that you think about it.
I don't know when colorists became like. I know that Marie Severin started it at EC, but I don't know if anyone else anywhere else was doing color guides, or did they just send them in black and white to the color separator? And the color separator put whatever colors in there.
No, they had to have color guides. Otherwise, there would be the heroes' costumes would be changing color every issue.
Like the superhero costumes definitely had color guides. Of that, I have no doubt. But did the whole issue have color guides?
Kind of like
someone had a color guide for every panel and every issue, or did they send them? We need to interview someone who knows this. Find out.
I wonder if they did it like animation, where you had color and style guides for the hero character.
Right? Did they do it that way?
Stuff didn't really have as much emphasis on it. I don't know.
Right. As long as you got Captain Marvel Jr.'s costume colors right, they could put whatever background color they want in there.
I don't know if I've talked to you guys about this, but another podcast to do. just the sheer amount of yellow that was used in colors up through.
You have mentioned it many times.
Okay, even to the 70s is just absurd.
But or was there may have been a color guide for the cover, but not the interiors. I don't know.
Maybe it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think everybody who worked in production then is gone.
An interesting thing to find out how they were, what direction or non-direction was there on this.
Yeah, because I have to imagine if there were color guides, there were color guides for the covers. But I've never seen one. I've never heard them mentioned. I've never heard so-and-so colored Superman in 1943.
Right.
You'd think if someone colored Superman from like 1942 to 1947, we'd know his or her name.
I wonder if they had like a generic set of instructions that from the publisher.
Yeah, maybe they did.
Situations, color this, and I don't know.
I'm gonna have to ask around and find out. Well, that's like one other thing I've never been able to find out is in the late 70s, early 80s, original art comic book pages where the corners were often cut or snipped at the printer. Yeah. Even in Sleepy. I've never been able to find out why. I've asked around, I've asked people. Lots of people have ideas of what it could be, but no one actually knows.
Does anybody know if they were snipped before they were sent to the printer or after?
No, they were snipped at the printer. That I know.
Okay, at the printer.
They were, and they're not all snipped uniformly. Sometime a corner was snipped a lot. Sometimes it was snipped a little. Sometimes they take nearly the whole top off outside the art. Have you ever seen original comic book art from late 70s, early 80s? There's a lot of that going on. And some people were saying, oh, that may have been how the printer marked how things were done. That it went. I'm like, you'd put your initials on it. Why would you cut it?
I wonder if logically it would seem like it'd have something to do mechanically with how they reproduced it.
Some people also said, well, maybe they were fitting it on the
plate
camera. I'm like, cameras are all rectangular.
Right.
Why? Cameras are rectangular. The pages are rectangular. There's no reason to snip corners to fit anything on.
I wonder if it had something to do with the way that the paper was fed into the machines.
I wouldn't think that would matter either.
I wouldn't think so. But I'm trying to think. I'm trying to use logic on this. No,
right, because that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen to the original art. Those it's like the original art would be photographed,
right,
and then they'd use those photographs to make the printing plates. And you'd have to put the art. The reason people thought it might be to put on the camera is that they have these big they're big photographic cameras, and I used one in school, and they have this big glass plate on the front and like a velvet, and they're like 4 feet by 4 feet. They're big. Matter of fact, the reason that comic book original art is 11 by 17 when it used to be 16 by 20 is because who was it? Murphy Anderson figured out that you could fit 4 up on the camera rather than 3 up.
Right.
So you save money. You save money doing that.
Right.
So what you do is you open up this big glass door. You put the pieces of paper on the bed of the camera. You hit this little button that's a vacuum that holds the art in place. And you close the glass again, you tip it back up, and you hit the button, and it takes a photograph of it, and that's what you print from.
If there's no
reason to cut,
if there's no standardization of how they clip these things either, that makes it even less.
Not that I've ever been able to figure out.
Yeah,
I have one here. Let me see if I can get it quickly. Where's
answer, Damien? No, Terrence was not on camera today. So.
We'd have him on if he wants to come on.
Yeah. No, he left us for food, and I can't say that I really blame him because I'd probably do the same thing.
Somewhere in here is an old Captain America page that I was gifted many years ago. I'll have to pull them all out. And go through them. I was gifted a Captain America page many years ago by Lee Elias, and it's not the greatest page ever, but it's cool. And it's got its corner. There it is. Let me put these ones back. Let me take it out of here. First of all, this top is cut right off. That is cut all the way across.
Yeah.
We've got this corner clipped. We got that corner. This one was actually neatly clipped. I've seen them clipped a lot less neatly than this. And this is Captain America 257 from 1981.
Is the top right corner clipped right at the borderline?
Yeah, it's right at the border.
There's little space.
Get another.
Yeah, if there's no uniformity in how they clipped them, who knows why they did it.
This one has got like that much of the top clipped off. I mean, that's a lot. That's where all like the information is in it. And the bottom too. Pardon me, it's not all the top. If you look down here, they clipped the top and the bottom of this one. Because if you see that writing, it's those boxes are clipped off.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why would the printer do that? I've never been able to figure it out. And people have their ideas, but no one actually knows.
Yeah, I think unless you actually have an interview with somebody who was there at the time.
Yeah, who was there at the time. But I've always wondered
people
that.
Probably passed away by now.
Yeah, and I've never heard anyone else like even mention it. But I'm always like, why is that like that?
I wonder if anybody that worked in the printing industry would have a better insight.
Yeah, that's who you'd have to talk to, but you'd have to find some old timer somewhere.
I mean, if there was standardization of the way they clipped it, then you could think it was some kind of mechanical process. But it's just random. I don't know.
There had to be some sort of pattern to it, but I don't know it. I've never been able to detect it by the way it looks. Like I said, that one's actually neatly clipped. I've seen like all four corners clipped at different angles and sizes. And if you were going to clip it to like mark it to show that you've already done something to it, why wouldn't you just initial it? It would seem to be easier to use a pencil than scissors. Yeah, in my artist edition, it seems like most of Kirby's notes were trimmed away. Yeah, a lot of his 70s stuff. Like I noticed it in like especially late 70s, early 80s stuff, not in the 60s stuff.
The pages that there are 60s stuff, you can see all the notes in the margins in the original art.
Do either one of you tell us, have you ever bought the Jack Kirby Collecting magazine from Tomorrow's?
No.
Every now and then I bought it.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of reproductions of Kirby's originals in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the museum guys who did the Kirby exhibit here. So yeah, they had original art, and you could see all the margin notes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's why they want to find the original art for Fantastic Four #1.
Good luck.
Yeah.
That might have been one of that might have been one of the first to be stolen. I'm sure.
I still want to know too who stole art out of the Marvel offices in like the late 70s, early 80s. There was a big art thing.
You talked about that.
That supposedly everybody knows who did it, but no one says. And I was like,
I bet it wasn't Jack Abel.
No. It was not. And another comic I got this week, speaking of weird, this is the last of my... Yeah, the other ones are freebies. Vinyl, issue number 4.
You would think this would be the one that came with the single.
Yeah.
There we go. This one just continues to be weird as our mystical cult takes on serial killers. But then we found out at the end of last issue, the sort of head serial killer who's in charge of... And the mystical cult and the crazy serial killers are fighting over an ex-FBI agent. And at the end of the last issue, the reason it's called Vinyl is because sort of the leader of the serial killers likes music, and he's got this MP3 player that plays music as he goes about his business. But one of the cult people broke his music player last issue, and we found out that he actually has Alzheimer's, and the music is the only thing that keeps him here in the here and now. So this whole issue, he's been useless because he doesn't have his music. So they're trying to save the crazy Alzheimer's serial killer now. Yeah, the music helps him remember what he's doing. But it's been a fun book, even though it's really hard to describe because it's nuts.
Are all the pages trimmed just at random angles?
No, they don't seem to be. It's not quite that nuts. And then the last 3 things I got were there were free Batman comics for Batman Day on Saturday. And no one showed up, I was told. No one showed up. No one cared that it was Batman Day and that there was free comics.
Yeah.
But I grabbed them. 0 Point Part 1. Concept by story consultant Donald Mustard. Writer Christos Gage. Riley Brown on the pencils. Oh, Nelson DeCastro is inking it. Colors by John Kalisz. Those are some old Marvel names there, but I don't know what it is. I guess this is the Batman Fortnite tie-in. That's what this is. I've never played Fortnite.
I haven't either. I can't remember. I think there's an upcoming month. I think it's November, where there are going to be literally 52 different Batman books in 1 month.
Not a surprise. The artwork is pretty nice.
You're the biggest Batman fan in the world. How can you 52 books in 1 month?
They like that number 52.
That's almost 2 a day. Yeah.
How much do you think 52 Batman books will cost? If they're all $4, that'll be around $208.
$208.
But I don't think they'll all be $4. So what do you think if you bought all 52 Batman books at retail price? What do you think it would cost you? Just on a guess.
It's going to cost you the cost of the books plus about $10,000 in what's the word I'm looking for? In therapy fees.
I'm thinking 52 books. How many of them can be more? Let's say out of 52 books, how many of them will be $4? 30 of them?
I have no idea. Yeah,
I got to think it'll cost you probably $260.
Could
for 52 Batman books. I would guess.
Yeah, I was picturing that number of that.
Wow, that's a lot of money for 1 month's worth of Batman.
Why don't they just put those in one anthology book? You know.
Once again, you see me going immediately adding up the total price of the miniseries and saying, "Oh, would that be worth it?"
All right.
Yeah, but absolutely no idea how to make money. This is something that kills the brand.
Yeah. Well, it's comics. All they know how to do is flood the market. That's the way it's been
I mean,
For
I
a long
love
time.
Lobster Johnson to death, but I wouldn't want 52 Lobster Johnson books in 1 month.
Batman the World. I have no idea what this is. Let's see.
It's an interesting cover.
Oh, Brian Azzarello and Lee Bormejo.
For man.
I know those names. Doesn't look like a comic. It looks. Oh, here's a comic stuff. Oh, some nice pinups and stuff in there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool looking. Oh, we got a bunch of stuff in here. Munin by Inpyo Jeon with Jae Kwang Park and Junji Kim. I guess we've got some stuff from
so is that like
around the world. That's why it's called Batman the World. Okay, now I get
cultures. Okay.
I caught on to those clever DC people. They got people from all around the world to do Batman stuff.
Gotcha. Are they doing them as traditional Batman, or the like in their culture's version of?
I'd have to read it to find out.
I'm just curious.
I'll have to read it to find out. That's all right. I'll take it for free. Throw it in the freebie pile that I'll recycle someday. Then we've got Batman Night Watch. This looks a little Batman family-ish.
Yeah.
Who's doing this? Get up to speed with Mayim Bialik. Oh, I guess this is the family-friendly Batman.
Mayim Bialik is family-friendly nowadays?
She's the scientist who teaches you things.
Yeah, she's going to be hosting Jeopardy, too.
Jay Torres, okay. Eric Owen. Don't know those names. Oh, yeah, there's this is definitely the kids version because there's an ad for kids book. Yeah, lots of kids book ads.
Yeah.
Kitty Batman. Once again, I'll go back to it. Someone said it's a problem when you're marketing the same character to children as you are to adults. You can run into problems.
Yeah.
Like bat penis outraging people.
The Batawang.
Batawang.
I remember somebody did a video interview with Darwin Cook a good while back. And he just launched on this rant. And I really don't blame him about, how they're just like what you said, you're having two different versions of the character for adults and children.
Yeah.
If I had superpowers, if I could bring Darwin Cook back to life and let him do all the superhero books.
I still have to read that New Frontier. I've never read that.
It's really, really good.
Everyone. The problem is Darwin Cook is one of those artists who, when I'm looking at his work, I'm not a big fan of his style. But when I'm reading his work, it's really, really good.
Yeah, if you're not a big fan of like that 60s kind of very bright, optimistic Silver Age kind of cartoony style, you're probably not going to like it. But if you're not a fan of that, you're going to love it.
I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of his drawing style specific. Like what do I have up here? Parker the Hunter. Here's a format thing that annoyed me. I bought this one when it came out. Really, just flipping through it, I'm not really a fan. There's something about his drawing style that turns me off. But when I read it, I'm completely absorbed. He's such an excellent storyteller. I'm totally 100% into it. I love it.
Would that same drawing style bother you as much if he was writing about a different subject or a different genre?
No, because there's just something about his style that doesn't. But just as I'm looking at it, and this happens sometimes, when I'm reading it, it's all okay. As a matter of fact, it's more than okay.
So it's a synthesis of the whole thing while you're reading it. But if you just look at it only, doesn't
But
register much.
Looking at it like this, I'm like, oh, look, he looks like Bruce Timm, only not as good, kind of thing. Everything reminds me of someone else, but not as good. Just when I'm flipping through it like this.
Well, I mean, I could say
but
that.
As I'm reading it, boom, I'm 100% absorbed.
I mean,
love it.
With a few exceptions, I can look at just about any book and it will remind me a little bit of something else.
Yeah, but with him especially, I don't know what it is.
But there are some artists that just are so themselves, it doesn't remind me of anybody else. Like Frank Woodring would be a good example of that.
Well, even looking through this thing, right? That's just flipping through it. I go, eh. So I've always seen like JLA, New Frontier, and looked at it and gone, eh. But I know if I read it, I'll really like it. And I was actually going to get the other Parker. Once again, this is a format thing that annoyed me. I was going to get the next Parker. There are four. There were four. I hadn't gotten the second Parker, but I was almost around to getting it, and they came out with the Martini edition.
That's what I was going to say.
Oversized hardcover.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to get that. And I was just annoyed.
Yeah.
That I bought. And that happens sometimes. Just something comes out in one format, and you're like, oh, that's cool. I like that. Then it comes out in an even better format, and it just annoys me.
Yeah, and you know that Earl Grey is going to have a copy of the better format somewhere on his shelf.
Exactly. He'll show it all. And he'll have gotten it at whatever format I have, Earl Grey would have gotten it at the store for $25 a month later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The oversized. I would have bought the oversized Martini edition instead of this. And then I ended up not buying the 4 little ones because I wanted the oversized Martini edition, and they didn't have them for 3 and 4, and I still have to get them. And this one is also autographed by
Darwin.
By Darwin. My friend Bunch, who was good friends with him, had him autographed for me. He's like, "You want that signed by Darwin?" I'm like, "All right, why not?"
Is this a trick question?
Well, I'm usually not. I'm not really a signature guy, but I like the little drawing, the little remark.
Yeah, for me it depends on who the signature is by.
I'm just not a signature guy. That's all it is.
Graphic Man just brought up a good point.
Let's see.
You staying with us there, pal?
Almost.
I understand.
No, yeah, it's just it's been the whole week, and I stayed at Graphic Man's until 3:30, and the following morning, I had to leave the house at 7:30 to go deliver a car. And today was kind of busy. Yeah,
so one of these days is going to really catch up with you.
Yeah, and I only have one day off this weekend because I work on Sunday, and I changed time slot. Especially because I actually need to stay up later for the possibility that I might do a night shift one of these days.
Right.
Night shift. Oof. I'd be useless on a night shift.
Shifts don't really work like this here in America, but if I had my dream shift, it would be like probably from about 1 a.m. to 9 a.m.
That's a weird dream shift.
I agree. That's when I'm awake, and that's when my brain's going 100 miles an hour. So.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to do a night shift because it starts at 10 p.m., which is 5 in the east. People will be getting off work, so there will be less calls from the US, and I'm on the US team. I won't take calls from Australia.
Gotcha.
Australia.
The one thing about taking phone calls from Australia when I was working is if you get somebody from South Africa, that's a harder accent to pin down. Because sometimes they sound like they're from Australia, and sometimes they sound like they're from New Zealand, and other times they sound like they're from England.
Look for the African words.
Well, if there are certain words that clue you in, especially if they use an A that's got the umlaut above it, and that's an easy tell. So, without context, it's like, I'm not 100% sure where this guy's from. So, yeah, my mom is a sleepy reader. My mom works from 3 to 11 a lot, shift work, and I bet it really does kill.
Yeah. Right now I'm on 1 to 10, and I'm going to switch to 3 to midnight.
Oh, now that Sleepy Reader is here, I want to ask him this this writer's English language question I had from what we were discussing this before. It's a new comic called "What's the Furthest Place from Here," and that little "what's" got me thinking. I think I would have named it "What is the furthest place from here?" Because to me, that's a little more pensive. What's the furthest place from here is fast. They're getting through the sentence real fast. And I'm not sure it has I think I would want the title to be a little more pensive, a little more, what is the furthest place from here? But I guess since it's a book about children, the fast might work better. I don't know. I don't know why I'm contemplating that contraction so much in this title, but I am. I would have written "what is." Me too. Is that just because we're old?
Well, if you worked in the Marvel, I can't talk to you. If you worked in the Marvel bullpen, you should have wrote "what if."
What's the furthest place from here? But this is pretty cool. Sleepy, this also, you can get the special edition that comes with a 7-inch vinyl single. I don't even collect records, and I think that's cool. $15 for a record.
I might be wrong, but I would think in today's market, it probably would have been cheaper for them to go with a CD instead of a 7-inch single.
I don't know. Yeah, we're old. Yeah. Use of contraction grows over. The contraction that bothers me is the apostrophe S-ing of everything. And not the possessive. Like, for like Lobo's back. Instead of putting Lobo is back, you put the apostrophe in it. That type of part. Because I find that causes confusion more than...
That was part of the joke.
Yeah, I know, but I know it was the part of the joke with Lobo, but everybody else does it too with everything. Mm-hmm. You see an apostrophe S on all sorts of stuff.
If you see it printed, I can see it be a little more confusing.
Yes,
if you're doing
that's what I mean. In print,
then
in speech it does. Speech is fine. I'm talking printed stuff. Because I've actually had people say to me, "Well, I like to write like I speak." I'm like, that's the only thing you're spelling phonetically. Right. All your other words you're spelling traditionally. Why is that one little apostrophe S the one part of speech you like to spell phonetically?
I mean,
that's the only one they're allowed to spell phonetically, so they do.
Damien said we're sold that if we had wrote this story, it'd have been Hark, Lobo hath returned.
Hark, Lobo hath returned. But I don't know who makes their ad image a boarded up old building. I don't know. I would have gone with one of these covers rather than a boarded up old building.
What is a boarded up old record shop?
Yeah, boarded up old record shop. I think that might be because they live in the record shop.
Nobody wants to see that in fiction because it already happens a lot in real life.
Yeah. And I just noticed in this one in October, The Great Gatsby #3 is out. I never got The Great Gatsby #2 on my pull list. I'm gonna have to inquire.
So it's coming up bi-monthly?
I guess so.
What if they did a sequel that was called The Not So Great Gatsby?
Because The Great Gatsby #1 came out a while ago. Where is it?
I'm going to do one where he's a fakir or a salami or something, and it's going to be The Great Gatsby.
Hey, I already said I'm doing the one where he's fighting Dracula in World War One. How things are written can affect audiobooks. It's a reason to care how things sound. Yeah. When we were younger, it was intentional to keep written and spoken language a bit separate. Listen, I don't know, like J-Rocks, who's a YouTuber, and he likes to write phonetically, but he does it with everything. It's like he embraces the bit. He writes everything phonetically. He doesn't just write apostrophe S phonetically. That's why I say if you say you like to write phonetically, then write phonetically. Why just apostrophe S?
Depending on who the author is, if they're doing that to show a dialect, like Irish would be a good example of this. Sometimes it can be and sometimes it is. On who's doing
I'm torn on writing dialects phonetically. I understand it. You want us to know this guy is Irish, so you're writing it phonetically. Mm-hmm. But then why don't you write everything phonetically? Because everybody has an accent if somebody listening to them is from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't me as the writer, my standard English be written phonetically? So it just gets into this tricky area when you start to write accents phonetically, because technically everyone has an accent. So shouldn't everyone be written phonetically? So, but I understand what they're trying to do, but sometimes it just gets me in this feedback loop in my head.
I just want an excuse to write the word modelize.
I would have sci-fi without caring. My audiobook readers freaked out on many of my choices for names, etc. Would have done things differently if I knew. Okay.
Can you imagine Tim being an audiobook reader with different names? Yes.
Oh, it's easy. Pronounce every alien's name in French.
Oui.
Yeah, I never thought about that. You have to think about how the names sound if you write a sci-fi book, especially when you're making an audio book.
Oh, if you ever want just for grinsies, just for the amusement factor, if you ever look at a YouTube video, it's like a product review or something like that that's in a foreign language. If it has closed captioning on it, have it auto-translate into English. Some of the results it comes up with are just bizarre. Some of them are funny just because they're so out of whack. They're just so comical. And other ones it comes up with, you're like, what does that have to do with anything he's talking about?
Sleepy Reader wants Saul's audiobook so he can hear the names. And spelling is already a phonetic nightmare. So then when you try to write in accents, it's like, ooh.
We'll have to come up with a series called Better Read Saul.
Well, when they do the Irish accent, it's never, of course, the real Irish accent.
No, and if you see it printed out, like if you see it spelled out phonetically, like DINNAE for did not or whatever, it ends up making you think it's Scottish instead of Irish.
Mm-hmm. It's tough. It's like I said, I understand when a writer chooses to do that. I just don't think I could ever choose to do that. It would just drive me bonkers.
And being a resident of the South in the United States, when people try to do that for Southern accents, most of the time they don't do a good job.
Well, my favorite are, Marvel's French accents. Sacre bleu.
Batroc the Leaper, especially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sounds.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Batroc is hamming it up on purpose.
I think Batroc is actually just Blackjack Shellac from the Looney Tunes.
I'm pretty sure none of the 1970s Marvel writers ever heard an actual French accent.
No, I mean Batroc as the name has two elements that make it an obvious joke. The first one is that there's perception that Larocque was a typical French surname, so they used the Rock. Mm-hmm. And the other one is that Batroc is close enough to Batrachia to make people believe that it's a joke about the French being frogs.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that I doubt very much that Stan Lee knew what batrachia was.
I never would have thought that, but now that you brought it up, that actually sounds feasible. Yeah.
But I'm not sure if Kirby knew, but I'm pretty sure Stan Lee would not know.
I wonder if Mobius looked at it and said, that's not amusing.
Look up S. Ron Mars on Amazon.
S. Ron Mars. My pen name when I was writing for a car website that I shouldn't be was M. Francis Portella.
M. Francis Portella.
Yes.
Not Portobello, but Portella.
No, Portella. 1 L.
Like Elron. S. Ron and Elron.
Yeah.
I was thinking Ron Mars with a Z on the end of Z.
Z. For
or you could
Zorro.
write as fried Mars bar, which is an actual food that you eat in Scotland.
I have heard of that before. I think it's a carnival food.
Yeah.
Oh, in America, if you go to a state fair, you can get anything fried.
Yeah, they fry everything.
You have fried grease, you know.
Well, we have fried
ice
grease.
cream.
Mm-hmm.
We have it's like chimichurros. We have that in Portugal too.
Yeah.
We don't call it chimichurros, but it's the same thing.
Right.
Everybody's got fried everything all over the world.
You know how fried paella would be.
No relation. His middle name is Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Ronald McDonald.
If you have a name that another famous creator has, I can see that would just be a nightmare trying to market yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jim Shooter's friend Janet Jackson.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Michael B. Jordan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, even Bernie Wrightson ran into that. There was a Olympic swimmer at the time whose also name was Bernie Wrightson. Bernie temporarily changed the spelling of his first name to drop the E off the end of it just so people wouldn't confuse him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're going to move from 1943 to 1953 for our next Read, Rip, and Slab.
More likely to find leopards in Jungle Comics now.
Once again, I kept all the Jungle Comics out because of Scott's prejudice.
But do we have Westerns?
Yes.
It's an informed opinion.
We have 3 Marvel ones.
They're all Atlas. Okay.
They're all Atlas 1953. Justice, Wild Western, and Astonishing Tales. Let's see. I forget the issue numbers on them. Let me see.
Okay.
As Justice number 41, Wild Western number 31, and Astonishing Tales number 28. You can't accuse me of murder. If you can't find me, he's vanishing right before our eyes. Once again, the Old West rings out with the fighting guns of Kid Cult Outlaw. Hurry up, you mugs. We got to get those gadgets off him. Those aren't the new guards. Sound the alarm. Oh, I guess they're busting him out of the electric chair in Justice. So we had a crime comic, a crime comic, a Western comic, and a horror comic of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah, the science fiction comics of 1950-51 morphed into horror comics, and then they morphed back into science fiction by 57.
I'm going to slab Wild
I'll give it a try.
because I like the cover the best on that one.
Kid Colt has the scissor lock chokehold engaged.
That's true. I'm going to read Astonishing Terror Tales at night, and I'm going to rip up Justice just because I've had too many cop stories in my life.
I'm going to slab Wild Western, rip Astonishing, and read Justice. I think those cop comics that Atlas put, those covers were really dramatic, especially when they were pre-code. Well, pre-code horror at Atlas seemed very generic to me.
What year was the code started again?
55.
55. Okay. And this is 53.
Mm-hmm.
All of
What am
those
I
have
doing?
really similar cover layouts too.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at them, Wild West and Astonishing have similar layout, kind of with the action moving across the horizontal.
Actually, let me see if the cover artist is the same in Astonishing or in Justice. The layout was the same. This cover design. Who did this cover design? Man, I remember who it was because it started around 1949.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Justice number what?
I agree with Dave. Yeah.
Let me see. Justice number 41, did I say? Let me Justice number 41, Wild Western 31, and Astonishing 28.
Wild Western 41.
Reading Astonishing, slabbing Wild Western, and ripping Justice.
That's what I would do too.
They all have the picture frame. Yeah, they're all looking sort of like Marvel 10th anniversary comics.
Okay, so supposedly, so the guy who put this in a GCD kind of is saying, I would say tentatively that Saul Brodsky did the cover. The things we're never really sure what Saul Brodsky did.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it has to be a best guess or based on what they've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess those side windows sold comics with all the other. I guess what sold these comics was the multiple stories in each one, so he wanted to show them off. I'm guessing.
I would assume that none of these companies back then did market research into.
Oh yes, certainly not.
What do you
Marvel.
like best? Like if you interviewed kids or whoever they aimed at, like, do you like this cover better than this one? Why? That kind of thing.
And the kids say, I don't know.
I think I like that Justice cover the best. I'm going to slab that. And I'm going to read the Western, and I have to rip up Astonishing.
That's fun.
You guys like the ribbon across each corner? No, I was never fond of any of that ribbon going across. That never did anything.
And for whatever reason, that ribbon just reminds me of Marvel.
Not Saul. Yeah. Not Saul. Sol. S-O-L. Saul Brodsky.
Yeah, Brodsky's tentatively identified as cover artist on all of them.
Oh, on all of them.
Yeah.
Well, it was, it was. These are all from I think August 1953. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense that one guy could draw them. Charlton copied the ribbon look back in the 50s. One of the best lines I heard about the DC Go-Go checks look from the 60s was that DC started that Go-Go checks look so that you could easily distinguish their comics on the newsstand.
Right.
And DC ended the Go-Go checks looks because you could easily distinguish their comics on the newsstand.
That's funny.
It actually drove sales down.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting on the ribbon. I wonder if that came from some other magazine. Yeah, I've definitely seen that ribbon on magazines. What does it actually say? Let me look, see if I can see it in the slightly bigger version. It says Astonish. Oh, it just says the title of the comic. Justice, Wild Western, and Astonishing. Wow. So all that ribbon was doing was repeating the logo.
Yeah, but if you put the comic like this is what you saw. The ribbon.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was a newsstand thing. Right, if you only saw that corner or the very top.
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's so comics, so books could be fanned out when seen on the newsstand. Yeah. Yeah, nice looking covers, definitely. Yeah, that must be so. I wonder which newsstands fanned them out. I mean, how would you? I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen I've seen plenty of shots of old newsstands. Sometimes they have them hanging from paper clips. Sometimes they have. Oh, you know what it is? Yeah, sometimes they have them fanned. I'm thinking fanned out like magazines on a coffee table, but fanned out like this in a stack. You could still see the name. When all you could see is that. Matter of fact, that's probably why these boxes are there too, because all you could see is this left corner of the comic if they're stacked like this. So you could see the name on the ribbon, and you could see all these little rectangles with the names on them. I get it now.
I know that different. No, I don't know if it's some publishers, but probably also distributors and whatnot. Had the equivalent of style guides on how these magazines should be wrapped on,
Right.
I'm sure that probably got thrown out the window. I'll put them up, however I want to. But
yeah, I don't think it was just the corner exposed. I think it was that whole left side exposed. The later corner boxes were done. There's a YouTube video on this. Okay. Yeah, imagine they would look good all lined up with just their left-hand sides exposed there. You'd get the name of the comic. That's why those boxes are there.
Yeah,
those boxes and that ribbon act all together. Interesting.
One thing that we still do here in newsstands is that if a magazine has like 2 to 5 copies, it'll be fanned out like that with just the corners exposed. It's the big circulation newspapers that are sold stacked.
Yeah, I'm thinking they're fanned out like this,
or the other way around. But so the photos, the photos I've seen.
That's where the ribbon would be, and here would be all 4 of. Oh, I got it the wrong way. That's where this way. That's where the ribbon would be, and then all those boxes down there.
Yeah, especially because that way they force you to pick it up with the left hand, and you don't touch the pages where the pages are open.
Yeah, you touch the spine, right? You can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At least you really didn't have to worry about that as much once the direct market came along.
Right. Oh, that's in Comic Tropes. I'll have to check that one out. He generally makes some pretty good videos. The art of the newsstand. Yeah, because I wonder when the spinner rack was introduced. Because the 70s was all spinner racks. I don't know if the 60s was.
I would imagine probably been in.
The spinner racks are for stores who sell their things inside. The way they stacked stuff on corners was more seen on actual street newsstands where the vendor was outside. So you can do it because spinner racks take up a lot of space, and you have more space inside a store.
Right. They take up, because mostly what I've seen in stores in like the 60s are shelves, like those shallow shelves that you put magazines on.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder when spinner racks replaced them. Right, the direct market led to the covers we have today. Posters taking up.
Trying to find right now.
Yeah, and also I think the covers we have today are poster shots too, because I actually saw this happen in real time. The reason we have so many sort of pin-up shot posters, like I observed this happening in the 90s at Marvel, and there's a few different factors involved. First of all, the pin-up shots are easier for the artists. That's one factor. If you give an artist on a deadline a choice between a complicated 3 or 4 figure composition all fighting, or one guy standing there. He's picking one guy standing there. That's just natural. You make more money if you spend less time on them. So there's that. And then in the early 90s of Marvel, it was before Diamond was the one distributor. There's lots of different distributors, and you had to have the cover done early for all these distributors' catalogs, but most of the time you didn't. You didn't worry about getting a cover done for some random for capitals for all these smaller distributors. They use whatever pickup art they can get. But as Diamond became more important and Heroes World first became more important, you had to for sure have the cover done because that was the image they were going to show in previews. So there's the two factors. The cover becoming important in previews. The artist, it's just easier on them to draw a single figure. And then there was the marketing guys from downstairs. These were just the guys who put, the house ads and stuff like that and did little marketing campaigns. They had no budget. They couldn't, in general, they couldn't hire artists to do stuff. You're on twice, and I think you're echoing.
Hold on, I got one too many tabs open.
Oh, there you go.
Jeez.
So anyway, so these guys, the marketing guys, the guys from downstairs, were constantly coming upstairs and looking for art they can use. And most covers that were specific to the story they couldn't use. They were looking for pinups. They were looking for, and also the licensing guys were looking for that stuff too. Because once again, early 90s, the licensing guys didn't always have, they didn't have money to hire artists. So if you wanted to license something from Marvel, they had to give you a Spider-Man drawing. Like all the Slurpee cups, for example, were all clip art from the Marvel. That's how it worked. So they were always looking for pinups and covers they can use for licensing, posters, advertising. So that's the third factor. I think the fourth factor was there are fans who really like those pinup covers. Back in those, there was occasionally a pinup cover. And the fans who liked those covers were very vocal because it was kind of like if it was a normal everyday cover, like back in a normal 1985 cover, nobody would say, the fans wouldn't go, "Oh, I really like that cover." They'd just enjoy the cover and go on with their lives. But since the pinup covers were different, the fans who liked that sort of stuff would always go, "Oh, I really like this cover." Oh, consistently. I saw that all the time at Marvel. Was that people who, when a nice sort of pinup cover came out, lots of people would go, "Oh, I really like that cover. Oh, I really like that cover." So those four factors, having to get the covers done earlier, it being easier on the artists, people being vocal about liking those covers, and other departments needing basically clip art in order to make ad stuff and licensing stuff, all kind of over like a 3 or 4 year period added up to a whole lot more pinup covers. And then it just kept going after that. And like I said, I was actually observing this in real time because I was never a fan of pinup covers. So watching them kind of take over was kind of like a horror movie to me, a slow motion horror movie. So that's why we have so many pinup covers now. Those four factors made them normal, and now they're standard.
I was doing some Google foo while you're typing there, and I found a spinner rack from the early 50s.
Okay, there must have been, but I wonder when they were widespread. Right, the direct market led to the covers we have today. Posters, right? It says, "What's a preview?" Like the comic book news shown. Now, previews is the name of the magazine that Diamond puts out.
Yeah, it's Diamond's catalog. They send out to comic.
Yeah, Diamond's catalog.
So
and when they became the only comics distributor, especially, they became so much more important. So you had to have your cover in Diamond previews.
Right.
So the cover was done early specifically for Diamond previews. And often they wouldn't know what the story was in the Marvel was so close to deadline, especially as compared to DC, that you needed the Diamond catalog cover 3 or 4 months before the comic came out. And often that comic wasn't made. That comic wasn't plotted. That comic wasn't scripted. That comic wasn't drawn. Nobody had any idea what was going to be in that comic. So you better put...
You weren't dealing with just Diamond either. You're also dealing with Capital City.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when you were just dealing with Capital City, it was actually less important. Because so what? You didn't get your cover. You didn't get the exact right cover into one of the 6 distributors.
Yeah.
Big deal. They used some other piece of art.
Right. That it wasn't number 2.
Yeah, I don't. Yes, you can go to the website Previews World. That's where you can see their whole catalog of stuff. Yeah. But when they became the only one, it became really important. Probably became important right before that when Marvel bought Heroes World. They probably wanted the covers in their own magazine, but I don't remember that so much.
The old story. That makes Mort Weisinger right. Do the cover first. We'll worry about the stories later.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss the old story-based covers so much, but obviously most fans don't. Yes, and we have a rise of cover collectors. While I'm moaning, all those covers are basically the same. Yeah. I get it every month. It's $4, but you see everything being offered. Yeah, that's previews. He gets everything.
Have you noticed, and this probably is go back to probably the 80s, have you noticed that indie comics, usually their cover is a little more tied to the story content in the book?
Yeah. I think a lot of times it is these days. But not always. Yeah, like vinyl is. That's tied to the story content. Vinyl. Norse mythology is. Once and Future is a pinup. Impossible Jones is sort of a pinup, but it's kind of an introduction, so it's really an introduction cover. But what bothers me most about the loss of the story covers is comic books' loss of cultural cachet. Because at one time, that was comic books' cultural cachet. Is that it was what set a comic book cover apart from any other cover in publishing was that it told the story. And people responded to it. Even people who didn't know or buy comic books would look at a comic book cover and smile.
Right.
Because they were, even for a moment, because that's what a comic book cover was. It gave you a story in the cover, and that you could, be interested in, smile at.
Archie's especially was just like a cover was like a one panel cartoon in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I've been used to. Disney doesn't use story covers in their comics in Europe. But they're not exactly pinup covers. They are illustrative to a point because there are always times of the year where you have to do a theme cover, like summertime, Christmas. And sometimes it's an anthology and all the stories have one theme. So you do a cover for the whole theme, even if it's not exactly representative of one story. Mm. The difference is that compared to US comic covers, they have more movement, so they look more illustrative of what you expect to see. Right. Or they're related to a bit of personality that the characters are supposed to have.
Right.
Especially with Disney characters.
Mm-hmm. But now I'm thinking European comics. The covers do represent what's inside, but they are more pin-up covers and they've been for a long time.
Like I said, as far as I know, it was always American, North American, actually probably Mexican comic books too, that had the classic comic book story cover. I don't even think I've seen that in Japan, because they have all anthologies and stuff, and then books. Mm-hmm. But it's like that was a bit of cultural cachet that was just comics, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, sort of like that was something Roy Lichtenstein was, to bring it back to him, was he wasn't doing whole covers, but he was using that storytelling within a single panel, that comic book cultural cachet,
Right.
Which that single panel stuff is still, people still respond to, but it's always old stuff. Mm-hmm. If you see anything like that, it's always riffing on Lichtenstein, riffing on comics. So like that whole cultural cachet of a Superman cover, just giving you this weird, funny, complex story in one issue.
Right.
And you knew exactly what it was. It said Superman across the top. Mm-hmm. It was gone.
Metal Line and then Heavy Metal, their covers had nothing to do with what was inside.
Right. They were more like book covers. Book covers are often an image, one image. They're more like posters. Mm-hmm. You use the book cover in all your advertising, and sometimes the author's name is real big. Sometimes the Star Trek is real big. Sometimes, like, I always found it interesting that the Star Trek paperbacks used to do. They always had sort of an image and then floating heads, kind of thing. Not comic book floating heads along the side.
I know what you're saying. There are a lot.
But heads moved into the comic because they had to show you which Star Trek characters were in a book. Right. So if Spock was in that book, you had to have Spock's head somewhere on that cover.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you just kind of blended in over here with some rays.
So when the Heavy Metal covers were by Luis Royo, you just knew that. I mean, those were great art pieces, but you just knew that.
Yeah.
It had absolutely nothing to do, because Royo would sell the same piece for different medium.
Eerie and creepy covers only sometimes related to the insides, like Heavy Metal. Maybe I think so. I think those because magazine covers are a different thing. You put celebrities on the cover. And I think that's what Eerie and Creepy did too, except vampires, zombies, and werewolves were their celebrities. Mm-hmm. So if you put a werewolf on the cover of Creepy, mm-hmm. you got a better chance of selling it than if you put a complex comic book in. And I think there was also, they wanted to get away from the comics or kid stuff too.
It also didn't hurt that one classic version of, I can't remember if it's Creepy or Eerie, that did have a werewolf on the cover, was done by Frank Frazetta. That didn't hurt either.
Yeah. It would not. Mr. Gretzky's filling in his Archie collection. Josie and the Pussycat.
I don't know if I have any Archie books these days.
Yeah, I don't know if I do.
I had a few when I was a kid. I don't know if I have any Archie books now.
By the way, Sleepy, I was working more on our comic book collector names and categories. We got the rare comics collector. We got the key issue comics collector. We got the new comic book collector. That's me and Sleepy, but we can overlap too. We got the back issue comics collector. See, Sleepy is a back issue comic collector and a new comic collector. We've got the collections collector, which is Paolo. We still don't know if we need a variant collector subcategory, or if that variant collector could really fall into key issue or any other categories. We haven't decided on it yet.
Somebody who collects one specific artist and then is getting variants just because that artist did it.
Yeah, but I think that they collect other stuff. Like I said, that's
true.
I think that, like I said, you're not just one of these things,
right?
You don't, or at least you don't have to be just one of these things.
Hey, we could have flexi disc collectors,
right? So I think variant collectors might be too variable to fall into one category.
And the collected edition as a specialization, which is the omnibus / art edition collector.
Right. Then there's hardcover. We can just call it hardcover collectors too. Fall under if you want to break down collected edition collectors more.
But there
cover collector.
But hardcover has become an acceptable way of collecting a normal edition.
Yeah. I say I don't know if there's enough cover collectors. Like what's his name? I can't remember that guy in Texas.
Buddy Saunders?
No, he's a YouTuber, but he collects only for their covers. He said that. And all of a sudden, I can't remember his name. Comic Crypt of Castle Hills. He's a cover collector in terms of he buys a lot of comics too, but he's like, I don't even read them anymore. I buy them just for their covers. I don't know if they're numerous enough to need their own category, but that definitely I'm going to write that one down just in case, because he's the only one I know who has straight up said
covers for certain topics as well.
But once again, I think that's a subcategory of like back issue collectors who also collect bondage comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think collecting artists or inkers, I've done that too, but I don't think that's its own thing. I think that's like a sub. I'm a comics reader. I'm a new comics collector, and I'll buy I buy everything Terry Moore does.
Right.
I'm buying it because Terry Moore does it, but I also buy this on a whim who I don't know anyone. So I don't think I don't know if someone who
I'm sure
I don't know if there's anyone who collect. I think the people who just collect, like the collector who only collects Bernie Wrightson comics, would be very, very small number, and has no other comics in his collection.
And there are a couple people that do that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are, but I don't think they need I don't think they're numerous enough to need their own category.
Right.
They're a subcategory of something. General comic book collector.
Well, I mean, you could say artist and writer collectors. You'll follow everything by one particular artist, writer, or what have you.
But once again, I think that just falls under new comic collector or back issue collector, depending. Because, like I said,
I'd see it more out of people who aren't really didn't start off as comics fans.
Right.
There are people out there that collect everything Neil Gaiman does.
He's a special. There are people like that who are special.
Like there are other artists like that too.
They'd just be a Neil Gaiman collector.
Right.
Yeah. That's what they'd be. But like I said, there's probably a dozen the Hernandez brothers. I buy everything they do. Terry Moore.
There's a certain
Carlos Speed, because that's how but I also buy other new things.
So do I. Yeah.
So like I said, I don't think that needs a subcategory. And there, like people who are collecting all the Neil Adams stuff from the 70s, they probably collect other comics too, and just pick up all the Neil Adams stuff while they're looking for all their other back issues. Lately, I feel the difference between run collectors and key collectors. The key people are taking. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of run collectors.
The key people, are they more collector side or are they more speculator side?
The key collectors,
maybe both.
Yeah, they're their own thing. They really are driven by key issues. Whether they read them or not is a whole other. Some read them, some don't. But they all want key. They all hope. They want to feel they're collecting something valuable, kind of thing. So that's what that is. I think that's a drive to make yourself feel like you're collecting something valuable.
You wouldn't be able to do it because of licensing, but if I was a billionaire, I would want to print just a special edition of Lock and Key that had a gold colored cover and it had a gold key logo on it.
I think at one point there were character collectors. I don't think they exist anymore.
I don't know about that. That's why I think that goes more outside of comics fans too.
No, we're only talking comics fans.
Oh, okay.
Here. Because at one point you could be a Spider-Man collector and just buy all of Spider-Man stuff.
Right.
Now there's so much Spider-Man stuff that all the people I knew who were Spider-Man collectors were driven off because so much of it was crap.
I also wonder how much of that is an American phenomenon too, because I know there are people in Australia that will buy anything that has the Phantom on it.
Yeah. Well, there are people who, like, I know people who keep their Amazing Spider-Man run going. They don't even read Amazing Spider-Man anymore. They just keep it going.
Yeah.
But that falls under the subgenre of comic collectors because they're buying other comics too. They don't even read their Amazing Spider-Man, but they read other stuff. They are speculators, yeah. But the people who look to their keys as trophies that prove they are serious, there's that too, yeah. How many kinds of things make up a key comic is made up by whatever you can convince someone is a key comic.
Yeah.
There's new key comics being invented every day because the key collectors want to collect key comics.
Right.
Many key issue collectors I met buy to sell later. There's that too. They're the speculator keys. Number one is, first appearances are always a key, even if it's a minor key. I see Spider-Man collectors and Batman collectors still around, and sometimes, but I haven't seen any who buy them all, and that's exclusively what they buy. I know Batman collectors who collect Batman and Detective, but they're not collecting every Bat book out there. There's just too much money now, and they're buying other comics too.
And if they were, they're really going to be hurting here in a month or so.
Speculators never went away. They're omnipresent.
Right.
And that's okay. I mean, I got nothing against speculators because I get the people who have something against speculators are the people who miss out on a hot book and want to read it.
Well, I don't really miss out. I just don't see a reason why that comic should be worth $800 instead of 50 cents.
No, it's not. No, I'm talking to the people who...
It's an old comic. It should always be 50 cents.
Not even an old comic. I'm talking like a new comic. Oh, the new issue of Impossible Jones. Everybody loves it. It's great. And all of a sudden it goes up to 50. You who want to read Impossible Jones for $4 can't get it because it's $24 all of a sudden.
So it's like that issue where you sell the
publisher, it then becomes my duty to flood the market with a second printing.
Right. That's what they try to do, but I'm just telling you, those are the people who I hear get mad at speculators. The people who want to read the comic today but can't because the speculators bought them all.
Right.
If publishers were more used to doing second printings, even back in the newsstand days, no, we wouldn't have people who just want to read the book acting like they're major collector, like they're rare book collectors.
Right.
Saying, "Oh, I want the first printing." No, you don't. You want to read it. Here, take the second printing. Take the third printing. Shut up.
That's why I said it's the new buyers, because no one hates the person selling Hulk 181 for $10,000. because you can read Hulk 181 in 9,000 places.
Yeah.
But you can't read the book that came out this week and is now $50.
Mm-hmm. Gotta wait for the trade paperback.
Right. Maybe we need to consider the effects of digital. Paper will be only for. Yeah, I think people still like paper right now.
I mean, even with digital, they're going to start, introducing NFTs, and that's
NFTs, right?
That's the whole thing with all over again.
Yeah, those are the people who I have missed out on reading comics that sold out in the first hour, then had to wait 2 months to get a second printing. I got behind. Those are the people who hate the speculators, the people who miss out.
This is
I wanted to read
very
it.
tangentially related, but not really. 7 years ago, Dynamite solicited a book, which is The Art of Sky Captain of the World of Tomorrow, which is right up my alley. It's like they custom made this book for me.
Yep.
It has been pushed back time and time again for 7 frickin' years. And in the new previews, there's a deluxe version of the book that's being solicited, I think, for December. And the first book is 7 years late.
Wow.
I'm not going to trust them to get the deluxe edition out. With my luck, they'd be the deluxe edition came out, and the regular one just vanished and became vaporware.
And unfortunately, I think digital is mostly for stealing. I think more people download from torrent sites than buy comics. And I don't even know how much they're reading from torrent sites.
They're not.
Well, I've also noticed that the publishers really are not very transparent about what their digital sales actually are either.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of digital hoarding going on at.
Oh, that's for real. Do you know why you download 500 comics in 10 minutes?
I don't.
Because you can.
Right.
They're there. Just get them. What am I going to do with them? Oh, well, look at them later.
Yeah. I think there are some people
books like that. And that's why I have a whole house full of them.
I think there are some people. There's a certain amount of people who, rather than buy the book, will torrent it digitally and read it. But I think that's actually a small percentage of the torrenters. But still, I think the main function of the biggest area of digital is getting the stuff for free.
Yeah, I think a lot of the torrents never would have picked up, never would have bought the book anyways if it had only been in paper format.
Yeah. The notion that I'm missing 500. It's been downloaded 500,000 times. Well, first of all, you can't possibly know that that anything was torrented 500,000 times. There's no trackers for that. Even if there were, you're downloading it because it's there.
Well, it's a completely different industry, but I noticed last week they're compiling numbers for album sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very interesting differential between the number of physical copies sold and what they're considering for streaming as counting towards album sales.
Mm.
It's like I would bet that 95% of the streaming numbers, they're not listening to the entire album. They're just listening to the song here and there.
I actually go and download the comics I buy every week, and I never look at them. I'm just like, I bought it. I should have a digital copy too.
Just in case.
There's no reason. I never look at the digital copy. I read digital stuff on Hoopla, the library app.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, when I used to commute, I'd read some digital stuff on the train. But that's 1% of it. Mostly I just hoard it. I'm like, I got the physical copy. I may as well go and download the digital
comics I got were from Amazon just because they were free.
I've done that too. I got some
a good way to introduce you to something to see if you're going to like it or not. But
I got a couple years ago a whole bunch of Marvel trade paperbacks, Epic collections, and this and that because they were $2 or $3 on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'll pay $2 for an Epic collection, which is like 10 or 20 issues. I don't even remember 20 issues. Like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's cheap enough, you'd hoard that. I hoard that way too, because not like I read it. It's just in my library.
No.
Yeah, I digitally hoard illegally, but read legal digital. How crazy is that? Because I'm only hoarding the stuff I bought. Don't ask me why.
I have done stuff. I mean, I'm not going to take the comic out from where it is. Let me just go. I do feel like reading it. I'm not going to take the comic out. I'm just going to download it. And when I'm done, I delete it. Or not.
Yeah.
Okay, I delete it. And the next time I can go and download it again. It's in the same place. It's this.
Matter of fact, my digital hoard is on a hard drive that isn't even on. My digital hoard. I haven't even had it on in 2 months to look at anything on it.
Yep.
But Saul brought up the comment that's going to kill paper eventually. I've been hearing this story that paper is going to get killed eventually for 40-some years.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
There's a
People
lot
like
of
paper.
stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be kept on paper. Official records.
Yeah. Who knows?
And plus, depending on certain books, like when the DC Comics Wednesday comics is a good example of this. You're not going to have the same visual impact digitally that you're going to have holding a physical copy of that book.
Oh yeah, and the newspaper is even bigger than the book.
Right.
I bought one once again. I did that thing where I think Wednesday Comics was like a $5 newspaper, and I did the math and went 10 issues or whatever it is, $5, $50. I bet they come out with an oversized hardcover for cheaper than that.
They did.
Sure enough, they did.
Half that price. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got the oversized hardcover, which is mostly unreadable, but it looks real nice. The Amanda Connor stuff is nice. The Ryan Sook stuff is not, but it's mostly unreadable. We'll talk about that another time because I'm getting tired. Time's running out for us. Paolo has to go to bed. So we'll say good night.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. Everyone out there have a good night.
Bye-bye.
We'll catch you Sunday on Sleepy Show, whatever channel that's on.
Mm-hmm.
Graphic Man on Wednesday nights. We'll chat with everybody. So you guys have a good night out there.
Bye.
Bye.